The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is sponsored by Too Fat Lardies, Firestorm Games, and by the generous donations of you, the listener. Thank you to everyone for your continued support. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast, episode 274. Red Alert! With hosts Neil Shuck and Mike Hobbs, and special guest Shaun Randell. This show was recorded on August the 7th, 2019. And while you're listening, and you're listening to this before the end of August 2019, why not take a minute and go and fill in the great Wargames survey from Wargame Soldiers and Strategy magazine. Put it into Google. The Wargaming Survey 2019. You'll find a link to it there. Hope you enjoy the show. Hello, welcome one and all to another episode of the Meeples and Miniatures podcast, the podcast all about all things tabletop gaming. I am indeed the Brumby Dwarf. It's Neil coming at you from a reasonable Leicester. It's hasn't rained today for a change, so it's been it's been good. So hello one and all, and as I say, welcome to the show. And I am joined this evening by a couple of esteemed guests. First off, we have my constant travelling companion. It is, of course, the Welsh wizard himself. It is Mr. Michael Hobbs. Hello, good evening, sir.
Hello, Neil. Hello, world. Hello, Meeps. I'm quite surprised there, Neil. Something strange has happened.
What's that then?
I managed to get through the intro in one take.
Well, it does help when you press the record button. It's always useful.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So obviously shows our professionalism is starting to show through. We're 12 years into this and we're finally getting the hang of it.
I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, we're getting there. I've got a good feeling about this one. It's going to be a good show.
Indeed.
No pressure then.
Indeed, and as you may have heard, we have an esteemed guest with us. You see, which is we are in eager anticipation of this evening, especially since we had the pleasure of this gentleman's company in the not too distant past. So if anything comes out, we'll just start sharing Cubby secrets.
Mm.
However, we would like to welcome to the show Mr. Shaun Randell. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hi, Neil. I'm great. Hi, Mike.
Hello, Shaun.
Pleasure to be here. Finally.
Yes, it's.
We couldn't afford you before.
I didn't think I had anything to say before.
Yes.
However, now he has.
Yes, having spent a weekend with us, you suddenly discovered you've got loads to say. So at one point we were thinking that we might, in fact, just have a special summer, which we a series indeed, which we might have entitled "A Summer with Shaun." But I'm sure he'll need a break. So we'll give him a couple of shows off before he comes back. I think maybe.
Well, it's only because I want to talk about games that you haven't got around to playing yet, Neil.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It's going to be like that, is it?
Yeah,
Right.
is that early fighting talk?
Yeah.
Just a
Plus,
tad.
we are going to take this as your probationary show, and we'll see how you get on. We'll mark you at the end. And then we'll drag you back on for the Saga show.
I hope I do better than my breakfasts.
Avocado. What are you thinking, man?
I decided while I was off to be a hipster millennial.
But I'm glad you're back to work.
Okay, and if you have no idea what that previous conversation was about, you need to follow Mr. Hobbs on Twitter. Although, having said that, following yesterday's Twitterverse explosion, yeah.
I asked one simple question.
Yeah, look what happened. I don't know. I mean, it's like, it's like, oh.
It's the power of the Hobbs, you see.
This is it. Yeah. That just kind of got out of hand a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean,
death, destruction, and chaos. My work here is done.
Indeed,
Well,
indeed. I mean, admittedly, I think it was, probably the fault of the guys at the Wargames website for raising the whole thorny issue in the first place. But at some point, the discussion kind of went very left field. And at this point, again, if you follow us on Twitter, you'll know what we're talking about. If not, go follow us on Twitter and go hunt down the last 24 hours worth of conversations.
All I can say is I'm glad I was at work and stayed out of it.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, so was I for most of it. I kind of made that decision part way through, especially when my tweet notification was going off every 10 seconds. It was like, oh my word, what have we got here? Yes, however, right, okay, so back to normality for this evening. And, yes, guaranteed virtually troll-free.
Yeah. However, as we're talking about Twitter, if any listeners who are on Twitter, please follow Neil at M&M Podcast, because he's fallen behind my vast hustle. He's trying to hide the shame, but he's not happy about it.
Oh dear.
You're going to talk about it again, aren't you?
Yeah. When did that happen?
Quite a while ago, actually. Yeah, I've been playing catch up for some time. Unfortunately, it would appear. You see, well, the problem is, since the Hobbs went multi-system and decided two types of tabletop gaming wasn't good enough, but he had to add the third. I think the RPG element is just skewing the figures.
I don't. I think I just, I know what I need to, tweet just to keep people interested.
He's looking for that blue tick, isn't he? He wants to be Mike Hobbs, the influencer.
Oh, I'd love to be an influencer. I don't know what it is, but I want to be one.
Well, I think you influence a lot of people to spend money.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh yeah, I had to apologise to somebody for that this afternoon. Yeah, yes, I had somebody tweet me this afternoon going, "Yeah, thanks for the podcast. I've just backed Heatherfields." Sorry.
Oh, hang on.
And a quick shout. Is it a quick shout out to Luke? Hello, Luke. Well done for buying Battle Companies. It's not my fault.
I think it was. It was you that started talking about it.
Yeah.
All this Lord of the Rings nonsense.
Yes, I did. I like the way that he went into a small sort of 10-figure skirmish game by buying a box of 200 odd figures.
It's what the right people do.
Like I say, I wonder where he got that idea from.
Well done, Luke. You're an inspiration to us all.
It's a great box, though.
Yeah.
I've got it.
So, should we crack on with the show?
Oh, good grief. Right. Yes, and I mean, I don't know what I'm doing wrong on social media. I mean, I even tweeted a cat picture a cat video this morning, and hardly anybody liked it. I don't know. I'm doing wrong. I don't know. Anyway, on with the show. I will mope in peace. So, welcome one and all. Tonight we have, as we've already hinted, the first of what could be many appearances by Mr. Shaun Randell, simply because he happens to be playing the game systems that we want to talk about, but haven't quite got round to putting on the table yet. So this is this first one we will be look forward to later. We will actually be chatting, I suspect in some depth actually, about the the recent, I was going to call it a board game, but that's the first bone of contention, so we'll step away from that. Tabletop game, Red Alert from PSC Games, which is one of the latest implementations of the Command and Colours system. So that's what we got to look forward to later. But before all that, before we do anything else, Mr. Randell, as you are no doubt aware as a long-term listener, at this point, because this is your very first time on the show, you have the unenviable task of introducing yourself as we ask you how on earth you got into the tabletop hobby. Now, your first challenge is to do this in under 30 minutes. Good luck.
Not 30. Not 37. Wasn't that the
well, put it this way: in the last two, it's been yes, So, as I say,
I'll try.
We'll give it a go.
Yeah. I don't want to bore people too much. If this had been a couple of years ago, I'd have wondered whether any listeners would have thought, "Well, who have you got on?" Because whilst I had lots of World War II airfics as I was growing up in the 70s, I didn't pick up any wargaming rules from the library or the school wargaming club because there wasn't one. So I never actually played proper wargame rules at all with my airfics models. I just kind of decided who won the battles. Obviously, generally the Brits beat the Germans, but that was all done in my head and not by dice or marbles. So actually, my real intro was via Dungeons and Dragons. So I started off as a role player, which I've noticed more recently. You've had more people say that they started in that as an RPG rather than a wargamer.
Geek culture, you see, they're coming out of the woodwork. Yeah,
absolutely. And
finally, you could admit, it's the stigma of being a wargamer has disappeared some time ago, but finally the stigma of being a role player. Oh, yeah. It's just amazing. Yes.
Never a LARPer. LARPers are what role players considered nerds.
That's Shaun Randell. Get off. Hey, moving swiftly on. Hello, Shaun. Can you?
So I started with Dungeons and Dragons or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons at school. Went round a mate's house in my sort of first year at secondary school, and he had this display cabinet full of these lead soldiers of fancy stuff, and I asked him what that was, and he said, "Oh, it's a really complicated game. You kind of play Lord of the Rings." And as a complete Tolkien nerd at the time, I'd already certainly read the Silmarillion before I was 10.
What, you read the Silmarillion before you? Oh, that's impressive.
Well, maybe I browsed through it quick. Certainly the first couple of chapters. On the
Well, it's poetry again. Move forward 4 pages.
Yeah. So I was like, absolutely, this is right up my street. And he became a firm friend, and he's still my main sort of wargaming partner now. We've journeyed through the whole sort of role playing, not doing anything after school, and now picking up wargaming and stuff. He's still sort of like my mate who I play most games against. We did the whole of the sort of traditional traveller, bit of RuneQuest, bit of Bushido, but we also did a lot of ball gaming. If we'd finished a particular bit of a campaign or a scenario sort of early on a Saturday afternoon, we would dig out Colditz. Any of the GW games, like, the Judge Dredd ball game or Warlock, or any of the sort of Space Fleet battles, any of those sort of war games that you would find in Games Workshop, the proper Games Workshop, Hammersmith Games Workshop, as opposed to what it became, where you could buy anything. We would do those as well. Gone into a bit of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, but that was quite late on. I think we were probably ready in 6th form by then. And people would like disappear and go in different directions, so the group sort of disappeared. One guy did buy the first box of Warhammer, but we all looked at it and went, we can't afford to buy several hundred lead figures to play a war game. So we didn't do wargaming. Then at work, I started work, we'd given up role playing, and actually my boss did historical wargaming. He sort of got me around to his house at the weekend with his friends to introduce me to Renaissance, and micro armor wargaming that they were doing, and his mate turned up with this book that Games Workshop had just published called Rogue Trader. So that got us into 40k, which I didn't really enjoy. And again, it looked like a lot of models I couldn't afford to buy to get a decent force together because, I was only 18, 19 and moved out of home and just didn't have any spare cash. And Mike will appreciate this, but then along came this big box called Space Marine, full of 2 armies in 6mm. And my love affair of Epic started. And I played that constantly for most of the late 80s through to the late 90s. Until they changed the base size and dumbed down the rules.
Yeah, that'd be 97 then.
Yeah. Along the way, I tried to play Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Just could not. There were no plastics then for fantasy, and you'd look at putting together a unit of cavalry, and for a 20-year-old kid, paying £20 to £30 just to put a unit of cavalry together was just too much. But then Grenadier did the Fantasy Warriors box set, and I bought that. And then I think my local Virgin Games store, when they all closed down, had a sale on, and I managed to pick up all the Grenadier Army boxes for the Elves, the Orcs, and the Dwarves.
Oh, cool.
Which, if anybody's noticed, they're the ones I've been painting recently for Saga Age of Magic and sort of Dragon Rampant and things like that. I also, around about the time I got married and had kids, my friend Paul and I took up Magic. So we did about 5 years in the mid-90s as well, playing Magic the Gathering every week.
Hang on a second. I thought you said you were young and poor, and then you play a game like Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, well, when I realised quite what it meant to try and keep up with a major expansion and 3 add-on expansions and get competitive decks put together. Once I think my second child was born, we kind of I thought, I can't keep this up. This is too expensive. And then I didn't play any games for a long while until the boys were a bit older and the Lord of the Rings films came out, and they sort of took one look at it and loved the whole sort of fantasy element. And I mentioned that I might have some boxes in the loft that we could do these kind of games with. Went round to Games Workshop. Of course, they had the license for the strategy battle game, and we probably kicked off my second main sort of foray into tabletop gaming, which was basically introducing the boys to the hobby via Games Workshop, and they really sort of took to 40k as well, until they went the wrong way around. They then started playing Dungeons and Dragons when they were sort of older teenagers, and they didn't have time for sort of tabletop gaming with Dad. And then my middle one decided that he wanted some historicals, so he said he wanted to do some World War II. We went to Normandy for a holiday, and he said, I'd like to game this. So we got into Flames of War. Then he decided he wanted to do Rome v Carthage. So we got into sort of 15mm Fields of Glory, which we didn't like. And it was in that time I was looking for new rule sets and sort of hunting through the net and found your podcast, Neil. And then that triggered me looking for new games to play and new rule sets. So I think we now play Sword and Spear for Ancients, and we now play Battle Group and Chain of Command for World War II. And I always kept going to Salute and Selwood just to keep an eye on things. And we fell in love with the models for Drop Fleet and Drop Zone, and then we just basically falling down that rabbit hole. And now I think every sort of wargaming, skirmish game and or big box board game Kickstarter seems to be sort of finding its way into this house. Although I've stopped buying big box Kickstarters at the moment. And the other one that got my mate back into playing with me after we gave up playing Magic the Gathering was when Saga was launched. We saw that at Selwig being demonstrated, like the look of it, like the fact there wasn't too many models. Like the fact that we could proxy it with my Lord of the Rings miniatures initially. So there was a lot of sort of proxying Vikings as Isengard and Rohan as sort of Anglo-Saxons and Goths and things until we sort of bought proper models.
Having said that seems perfectly reasonable. And
yeah,
of course, now you can do it without having the need to proxy.
Yes, absolutely. Now I actually like painting. Of course, what I hated at the time and what Epic was great for was painting for Epic was really easy. As soon as I tried to paint anything for Fantasy Warriors or 40k, or even initially for Lord of the Rings, I just really didn't enjoy painting at all. It's only probably about the last 5 or 6 years. I actually do quite enjoy sort of going to the shed and spending sort of 40, 45 minutes in the evening just vegging out, listening to a podcast and clearing this huge backlog I've got.
That all sounds perfectly reasonable, you know.
It does indeed. Okay, so 2 questions. So you said you mentioned several games here. So, okay, what's your current favourite rule set or game?
Oh, good question. Red Alert has hit the table about 15 times in the last couple of months since it came out. So sort of board game, crossover game, certainly Red Alert is up there. I'm really enjoying Saga version 2, both Historical and Age of Magic. But actually, ironically, the game I've played the most with a couple of friends, actually, over the last 2 or 3 years, must have played over 100 games of Frostgrave. We've done 2 whole campaigns, with 2 war bands. So played a lot of Frostgrave, played a lot of Saga, played a fair amount of Chain of Command. Yeah, probably Saga, to be honest. Over the last 5 or 6 years, it's just always a good game to go back to.
Brilliant. And what's your favourite army from your collection?
My favourite painted army from my collection is my Infinity army, but that's because Sigurd at Battlebrush Studios painted it, and it just looks amazing. My other favourite army that I like to use actually is my Romano British army that has only won once for Dux Britanniarum. But I just like the look of Romano British sort of Dark Age models, and I'm really pleased with the way I painted my Footsore sort of King Arthur model as a leader.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, I'm very much, what I'll try and do is play, 3 to 4 games in a row. So because obviously we was playing so many games, so much choice. And also the boys been at university over the years, and only being around with like 3-month gaps and stuff, you might well pick up a game. You might have known it really well, and then you completely forget the rules. You forget the nuances, and so, but if you play it sort of 3 or 4 times in a row before you try something new, then at least by the 3rd or 4th game, you're just playing the game and enjoying it, and not getting the rules wrong or worrying about things.
Cool. That sounds like a perfectly reasonable idea.
Yeah, I must try that sometime.
Yes, indeed. Hang on, was it playing the same game twice in a row? Good grief! Yeah.
Madness.
Indeed.
Well, what my mate Paul likes to do is sort of build and obviously it's been talked about a lot. I think the Lardies talk about it in the podcast is to build a narrative around the games, even if it's not a proper campaign. I've played do like to play a campaign as well. But build a narrative that links the games together, build a story around it. I mean, obviously, Dux Britanniarum is excellent for that. But we did that with our Saga, sort of Orcs v Dwarves game, where, all the leaders were named and there was a reason why they were fighting. And depending upon the outcome of each battle was why we were fighting the next battle. And that was just sort of written out and sort of almost told as putting some role play around why we were fighting without actually having to do any paperwork or having to worry about logistics or, did we have any... There was no campaign rules around it, but there was a narrative.
Yeah.
And we do that a lot. We actually did that quite a lot a couple of years ago when I first got into Command and Colours Napoleonics, where we would play some linked games and there was a story about between each game. I know there's real historical scenarios there, but we chose sort of 4 linked scenarios and then gave a story around the outcome and how that affected the next battle kind of thing.
Yeah. Cool. Excellent stuff. Well, welcome to the show, Shaun. And on that note, what we will do, we will take a quick break. And when we come back, it's time to enter the confessional. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is proud to be sponsored by Too Fat Lardies, purveyors of the finest rules, supplements and gaming accessories for all your wargaming needs. Most recent in their offerings include the 100 Days Scenario Supplement 1815 for General Dame by David Brown, and also the latest pint-sized campaign for Chain of Command, taking the Gemblow Gap. Don't forget that you can get more Too Fat Lardies by viewing Lard TV on YouTube. The latest episodes include a 2-part playing of games from the Gemblow Gap supplement, and also includes the latest video from Big Rich as he customises some more terrain. Also, don't forget that for your listening pleasure you can also download The Oddcast. It's available on Lord TV, but also via your podcast app of choice. Too Fat Lardies. Play the period, not the rules. Dearly beloved, we are gathered once again together to confess our spendthriftedness. Is that a word, spendthriftedness?
It is now.
It is now. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes. It's time to chat about what we've been purchasing over the last couple of weeks, and also maybe what has caught our eye. Now, since Shaun is a guest on the show, he has the prerogative of going back a bit further, should he so wish. However, obviously, any consequences of this confessional are just, I'm sorry, we cannot be held responsible for what happens.
Mm.
Besides, Shaun, no one's listening. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Hopefully nobody knows me.
Yet.
Yes. Okay, shall I go first again? Because this seems to be falling into that. Okay, so as I've mentioned in the last couple of episodes, given let's just say the first half of the year has been, lots happened in the first half of the year. I'm currently trying to be more moderate, shall we say, in my spending habits. So that's what I'm trying to do, and then the odd Kickstarter pops up, and hey ho. Right, so what have I done this? What have we backed, and what have I bought since we last chatted? Right, well, I was umming and ahhing, but I eventually backed it. Yes, I backed the Britannia Kickstarter from PSC. They're reprinting that the classic Britannia board game with lots of nice plastic pieces.
The pieces look really nice, don't they?
They do.
I have been looking at it and currently not clicking.
Yes, because it's now in kind of late pledge mode. It's a classic. It is a classic game. It is really cool. And when and it's, I think at the point where they turn around and said, "Okay, we'll put all the plastic forts and everything in it as well." Okay then. The game's been on my radar for some time. It used to be, I think the last reprint was done by Fantasy Flight, which apparently was a really good version. I thought I'd go for it. So I did that. Other than that, the only things I have done is this week I ordered a couple of things from North Star. First off, they have just done a bundle for the second set of Rangers of Shadow Deep miniatures that they produced. I originally bought the first set of Rangers and the Giant Flies, and they have since done some sculpts with a couple more Rangers. I think there's a Shadow Knight, a couple of skeletons, and a couple of Temple Guard. So I ordered that, and since I was there, and I was ordering from the same place. I thought, you know what, I'll throw it in as well. So I ordered the new pack of Dwarf Champions, which were released to coincide with the Heavy Infantry box set release.
Very nice.
And it has to be said, that has been it. I have been somewhat restrained.
That's quite good of you.
Yes. Admittedly, part of that thinking is because a certain Kickstarter finishes tomorrow. So basically, it's a case of, well, once that's finished, I've kind of spent my budget. And then some. So yes. So that's me. So, Mr. Randell. So, what, sir, do you wish to confess? Have you been a good boy, or have you been bad, very bad?
Depends on your definition. My wife would consider I've been bad. I would consider I've been good, but I picked up the Drop Zone Commander sort of 2nd edition rulebook, Battle for Earth. That was sort of spotted in my local game store the other day.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So it's got the Drop Zone, which is the ground combat game, 2nd edition rules in it, which are completely sort of like redone from the ground up by TT Combat, and it's got some additional rules and whole new rules for the Resistance faction fleet for the Drop Fleet Commander rule set. Quick read, it looks very light, and there's a lot of streamlining, maybe too much in terms of, and I think the community has kind of fragmented because obviously with the whole hiatus when Wargames went under before TT Combat sort of rescued him and started reissuing stuff. It's hard to get a gauge on what the community really think of the rules. I haven't had a chance to use them yet, but me and both my boys have Drop Fleet and Drop Zone, sort of full armies and fleets each. So we do want to use those, as they are fabulous models. So sort of picked that up. I bought my first 3D printed model from Butler's Printed Models, which was a Command half-track in 15mm for Chain of Command and Battle Group, because nobody does one standalone, with the bedstead radio aerial in 15mm for the 251 half-track by itself that I can find.
For the 251?
Yeah, there's plenty for the 250. But I want a Command half-track for my Armoured Panzer Grenadiers, and the only people who do one are Forged in Battle, and they've got two problems. One is that you can only buy it as part of a wider set that includes ambulances and things, and I've got all of those. And the other one is, of course, all the Forged in Battle stuff, they base their vehicles for you.
As they should be.
But I see no problem with buying ready-based vehicles.
Well, especially from such a lovely firm as Forged in Battle.
Indeed, and to be fair, I have actually looked at that particular set that you are talking about on several occasions. I haven't, because obviously, as you say, that is one of the things that is missing from most. So I was just looking at I've got the PSC 251 conversion kit.
It doesn't have it in there.
It doesn't have it because it's got. Yes, I mean that does a lot, but no, it doesn't. It doesn't do the 251 command.
No, because I had a game in Battle Group with my middle son Alex the other day, and I needed the light cannon ones, and I needed and for my command group I needed the radio. And whilst I had the PSC conversion set and can do the ones with the sort of light cannon on it as sort of support, it didn't have the radio. So, to be honest though, the Butler's Printed Models, whilst the inside has the radio set, inside the half track, it doesn't have the aerial either. So I've actually got to make one. So it's only half a solution. And I did sort of think, I'm going to email them and complain. But when I actually checked the picture of the model on the website, it didn't show the aerial. I just assumed it came with it.
Well, to be fair, when it turns around and says it's the command half track, you kind of think, well, hang on a second, what makes it look like a command half track?
Yeah.
So I must admit, I would kind of go with you on that one. I would suggest, hang on a second, it's a command half track. So where's the bit that shows it off for most people that it's a command half track?
Because I basically could have just used an empty half track and put a bedstead on it, but I didn't want to do that because I thought I want to see the radio inside it. I never used to think I'm going to be that particular about these things, but suddenly in my old age I've decided I am.
Now you see, I would definitely have just gone, well, you can see the aerial.
Yeah. So in fact, it's not really a solution for either of us. You've got to make the aerial, and but it does include the radio in it. So there we go.
So basically, what you're admitting to us is that you should have bought the Forged in Battle one.
No, because only Heathens base vehicles over 15 mil in size. I concede base vehicles for 6 mil, maybe. I never based any of my epic models, by the way, Mike, other than bikes. But I never based any tanks.
Well, I can't say about that. So butlers then, because I've seen some pictures of them, on various sort of forums, and they look a little bit rough. So what are they like in the flesh?
Oh, everything apart. There's a little bit of tidying up to be done around the tracks. It's slightly smaller than a PSC plastic track, half track, but not too bad. It's very clean, but you do have the striations on the front, so I will have to get a Dremel to that, because I don't think you can really pretend it's Zimit sort of.
I don't quite think they got as far as putting Zimmer in place on half tracks, mate.
Yeah, exactly. Which I did see somebody suggest you could sort of like pretend it's that, and they're going, yeah, no, not on half tracks.
No.
But you pay your money, you take your choice. It's the only individual half track I can find.
Yeah, and kudos to
them
for trying to for doing 3D prints directly out.
Yeah,
you have to give them that. I'm just saying that you sort of look at pictures they've released in the past, and it's just like, oh, that looks really rough. And they probably didn't do themselves any favours. So, but hopefully, as printer quality increases, maybe they'll get better. Hope so.
Yeah, no, I'm happy with the overall quality. I said I just need to probably just file down the bonnet. I'll put a picture up on Twitter so you can see.
Oh,
but not right now. What else have I bought? Been on eBay. Started the samurai project, and so I needed Japanese vegetation, so I've been buying bamboo and cherry blossom trees off eBay for that, and then our game of Battle Group proved, as it always does every time you play Normandy World War II, I don't have enough hedges. Yeah. Virtually all the people who sell hedges seem to sell solid ones you've got to paint yourself, unless you go on eBay, and then you can find people making them for you out of clump foliage and stuff. So yeah, I bought a load more hedges off eBay for that.
It does seem that, especially if you play World War II, the two things you never ever have enough of is hedges and trees.
Yeah. And also, as I've got a long on the back burner French and Indian War project that me and my friend want to do, even if I think I'm going to have enough trees in there for Normandy, I definitely don't have enough for French and Indian War, so I will be continuing just to buy packs of trees whenever I can. What else I bought? Infinity. Now that we've got some really nicely painted factions, my boys have been playing that over the summer holiday. So I went out and bought the objective set and sort of objective room, panic room that a lot of the organised tournament play have for their scenarios. Which, not that we play tournaments, but obviously it gives you specific objectives like antennae or control rooms, computer room stuff, and a specific sized room that forms the main objectives for the scenarios. So I bought those from Custom Meeple, which are sort of MDF and plastic. I need to build those. And then also, because I did accompany you guys to Joy of Six.
Indeed you did, yes.
You did, yeah.
I might have spent some money on Vanguard's website.
Another victim.
You kept that one quiet.
Yeah, because my epic sort of journey started well before flyers were a major thing, and before things like Valkyries and stuff were actually produced in 6mm. I didn't really have any Marauder bombers or Valkyries for my Imperial Guard army, so I might have bought some Kestrels that are the Vanguard Nova Valkyrie proxies and some Spitfires. Very nice indeed. Very chunky. Feel a lot bigger than original Epic models in terms of scale, but as a flyers, it doesn't matter too much. But they're very nice models.
Yeah, they are, and I haven't seen those ones yet, but the ones I've got are lovely.
Yeah. And and my Mythic Battles 1.5 Kickstarter turned up, which really annoyed me because all I wanted it for was the box tidy. But while I was on there, I did buy the Hera expansion because I hadn't bought it first time round, and then suddenly realised you can't really play a game without Hera or Perseus. So I only wanted 2 things from it, and then it was over 6 months late, almost a year late, while I rewrote all the rules and redid all the dashboards, all of which I didn't care about. I just wanted somewhere to keep my dashboards and cards tidily.
And hey, guess what? Have they actually given you that bit, or was that not yet to arrive?
Oh no, that's all arrived.
Oh, cool.
It's just the wait for it. It's just like this was meant to be out before Christmas, and it was just going to be like a 3 or 4 month quick follow-up Kickstarter to redo it for anybody who missed it first time round, or people who haven't received Mythic that year, wanting to perhaps fill in gaps, and then they took over a year to do the second one. And really, we put Mythic away because a tear up and tear down when you're hunting for all the cards and you're hunting for the right dashboard and you're trying to, it take over an hour to set the game up when you're trying to find everything. So we just put it away and said we'll do that when we've got the box to the deluxe storage box.
The deluxe storage box is a massive solution for that. I mean, it still takes a while, but it helps a lot. Anyway, all I'd say on that particular front is at least you two have got yours.
Haven't you got yours yet?
Nope.
Ah.
And also I have not received an email. Now apparently, so there is a story behind this, people, in the fact that it came about that apparently there was an issue during production. And a particular batch of what they were producing was either a misprint or there was something that was damaged during production, and so they decided that, or something was missing, so they decided that this needed redoing. Unfortunately, it was at a point where they had to basically slot it back into a production schedule.
Yeah. Oh
now,
yeah.
Now they reckon it's affected 900 backers. All of which should be notified, although allegedly, I think they're saying they were subcontracting the distributors to notify those people who were affected. But given the fact that I've still not heard anything at all about that, I am resigning myself to the fact that I may be one of the fabled 900. And looking on the forum today, the people were saying it's going to be another 3 or 4 months.
Oh.
So,
well, that's going to kickstart me to go and play mine and take pictures of it just to post them to you.
That's evil.
Yes.
We still have 1.0, which we're perfectly happy with.
Mm.
And and it's something actually I do need to go back to. Although having said that, I haven't got any of mine painted yet. And
don't worry, Neil, neither have I.
And looking at some of the excellent paint jobs, not only that people like Mr. Hobbs and Mr. Slater have been doing, but also when you see like was it Luke who actually managed to paint all of his?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a bell.
Rat bag.
Yeah, I mastered on all of his core box.
Yes, that looks very nice. I'm kind of in two minds as opposed to. But having said that, if I just say I won't play it until I've painted everything,
Never play it.
Give it a couple of years. Yeah. Although, having said, oh no, that's in New Shine. No, I think we talked about. No, I can't remember. Anyway, there may be added incentive to get that out shortly. But yes, at least you've got yours. Sorry for interrupting. I just thought I'd add that in there. It's almost like it was spelt with an N as opposed to an M. But there we go. Anything else, Shaun? Sorry?
No, that was it. You wouldn't interrupt. In fact, I was finishing on that point.
Most excellent. Well done. Well done. You were, yes, that was that may have challenged Mr. Hobbs. Mr. Hobbs, what have you been up to?
I've been pretty good. I got the last few weeks. I have backed a Kickstarter or two.
Have you?
What
have you been backing?
Efforfields, or Efforfields, I was called. But I mentioned that last time. Did I mention BattleTech Clan Invasion last time?
I thought we were talking Alpha Strike last time, then.
No, it's called Clan Invasion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. So I mentioned that. So I've got that's finishing in 10 days. That's very nice. Other than that, I popped along to Firestorm a few times. So I was working in the office a fair bit last week. So I
and since the office is round the corner, it would almost be rude not to. Yes.
Yeah. The car just takes me there now. So I picked up one of the new Adeptus Titanicus Knight models, which has just come out. Looks very nice. So there's 2 in that pack. And then I decided I'd start putting together some of the buildings that were in the box, the big box I bought last year.
Oh yeah.
The buildings are really nice and fun. So I thought I'll get some more buildings, but I'll get some of the nice little pointy spires. But they didn't have any, so the only thing they had there was a great big box of buildings, which is the administration sector, which is chomped full of lots of future buildings. So I got that instead.
But you wanted spiky spire bits. Could you not kind of wait till they came back in stock?
Oh.
Did you say wait?
Yeah, I did. Well, let's face it, wait is a 4-letter word.
There was this huge box there staring at me, and there's me with an extra 5% discount thanks to our wonderful code.
Indeed. Summary Meeple, people. Summary Meeple.
Yeah, not spelt how you think it's spelt.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, again, my bad. Just because I got a slight typo.
Yep.
In my email to Rob. And thank you, Rob, for being so pedantic in following my spelling completely.
Yep.
Yes. Just be attentive in the advert later, folks. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I got that. Picked up some extra paints and some clippers and glues and stuff and job on that sort of stuff. Doesn't really count. Then I decided to pick up one of the Zombicide expansions, which I haven't got. It's on Amazon. So.
I'm sorry, there's a Zombicide expansion you don't own.
There's a couple, not many. So I got the Murder of Crows expansion. You can never have too many crows.
Is this Black Plague?
Yeah, you can use it in Black Plague and in Green Horde.
Great, yeah.
There's a bunch of crows and ravens and stuff. And then, well, this wasn't actually bought. This was a gift. So, Jeff, my good friend from up the Vonver. So this is higher Jeff, not lower Jeff from Cathilty.
Ah, hello, Jeff.
Hello, Jeff. You were playing a game. You said,
this is Jeff, your Lord of the Rings pusher.
That's the one.
Yes.
Yeah. Not just Mike's Lord of the Rings pusher. I might have bought quite a few from Jeff. Was it summer before last, where the big sale was going on?
It
has to be said. I might have got the odd piece or two.
Yeah, so, yes. Me too.
Yeah. Yes. So it's Jeff, our joint Lord of the Rings pusher.
Yes.
Well, hello, Jeff. He turned around to me. I went, "Oh, I got a little box of epic stuff which I don't want. You can have it." And I go, "Are you sure?" He went, "Yeah, just keep what you want, and anything else just give to Matt." And he pulled out this massive, great chunky box that's grown at the sides, which I sort of opened, and it was like that scene from Pulp Fiction when they're in the diner and they open the case. So I haggled with him and said I had to give him some money, and he went, "Oh, what about swapsies? I'm after some GHQ stuff." So we've done a deal. GHQ has been swapped for a large box of Epic stuff, and I've given Matt some bits as well for his Eldar forces. So I've now got a lot more Epic than I ever had before, unpainted.
And here's you having just made several investigative. I got that one out. That's good.
Yeah,
yes. From Vanguard. I mean,
lucky, never across the streams. This is Vanguard is my 30k. Epic is 40k. There's 10,000 years difference now. It's like it's like you saying, I bought some mobiles I can use them in World War II.
I'm using Vanguard for Epic as opposed to
You're allowed to though, Shaun.
Yeah.
This is just me and my completely anally retentive persona coming out.
Yeah, It's probably a different subject later on the hobby chat, but yes.
Yes.
Okay. Fine. Right. Is that it, Mr. Hobbs?
That's it, yeah.
Cool.
3 things.
Wow. I must admit, okay, so let's have a chat about what we've seen that's shiny, and I must admit there was something I forgot. Although it's easy to forget because it was online, so I kind of forgot about it. But the new campaign, the second campaign for Journeys in Middle-earth is out.
Oh, is it?
Oh, yeah.
That's quick.
Yeah, no, it actually got released on the right. If your software hasn't updated, it took through an update, and it actually came out on the eve of Gen Con.
Yeah.
Very good.
Because they were selling the miniature box set at Gen Con, which kind of twigged me to the fact it was out. Its name escapes me at this point in time, but I think the campaign pack is a DLC upgrade for the app. I think it's about $650 or $690 or something like that. All being well, that means that the character expansion pack for that campaign is going to be hitting our shores very shortly.
Ooh.
So looking forward to that. Yeah, because that's just it's 2 big orc characters and kind of a heroic warg. So looking forward to getting those. Right, okay. So ooh shiny. Right. I was asking the guys actually before we started recording whether they'd seen the in-flight report from Fantasy Flight Games, which was, sad bunny that I was. I actually watched the live stream, which was so that was on the press evening of just before the start of Gen Con. Some interesting things there. There was a lot of negative chatter going on the stream, basically going, well, is that it, sort of thing, with some of the stuff. And to be fair, you're looking at what they announced, and there were several systems that appear to be conspicuous by their absence. So, for example, they didn't mention anything about Journeys in Middle-earth. They didn't mention anything about Legend of the Five Rings, and several, nothing about Mansions of Madness, for example. Although, we already know that they've announced a new big expansion for Mansions of Madness. It's coming out. It's coming out towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
So basically what they turned around was that they announced yet another Arkham game, which allegedly is playable within an hour. It's actually called Final Hour, but I think most people were kind of going, "Oh, what, another Arkham game?" Which I kind of go with it a little bit. It does appear that they are wringing everything they can out of that franchise. Yeah, let's face it, they have done some very good games within the Arkham franchise. And Mansions of Madness is brilliant. The Arkham Horror card game is brilliant. Elder Sign is great fun. I haven't played Eldritch Horror, so I couldn't comment on that. We've got some interesting Legion releases. Obviously, Legion for the most part for the end the end of the year is now starting to concentrate on Clone Wars. So it's the Separatist and the Republican armies, which is what Josh is really into, because he's kind of, as far as his Star Wars interest is concerned, he's very much more of the Clone Wars era. And he played, I think I mentioned this at all. I don't know if you were aware of, there's an online game called Armour.
No.
Yeah, he played.
Yeah, I played Armour 3 a lot.
Right, okay. He plays that a lot, and he either plays the modern combat version, but he also has a group that plays with basically with a Clone Wars mod. So he plays 501st. So he's heavily into the Army of the Republic. So especially when they did things like announce Phase 2 Clone Troopers and stuff, he was really excited. And they are starting to do the tanks. There's a couple of vehicles they've announced. There's the Separatist hover tank, the one we see first in Episode 1. In the Gungan battle, they're releasing that hover tank, and they're also releasing a hover tank for the Republic. It's really interesting because it's the same hover tank that they have in the Return to Hoth expansion for Imperial Assault. And it's not until you see the Legion model that you realise just how small they have shrunk that tank for Imperial Assault. Because the Legion one's quite big. Oh, and they announced two Marvel games. So it now seems that because they're in bed with Disney, they've now got the Marvel license.
I missed that.
Right, so basically there's a new living card game designed by Nate French, i.e. the guy who did Lord of the Rings. There's a new Marvel living card game. It's a cooperative card game, which a lot of people think might actually spell the end of Lord of the Rings, because obviously they might just decide that they're going to move on in their cooperatives and now support Marvel, which, to be fair, it wouldn't surprise me.
No, they've released so much of it.
Yeah, a huge amount of content. And so, the movement was that wouldn't surprise me. But the other thing they've done, and this is actually not themselves, but they're with a partner. They're releasing a Marvel miniatures game, to which the instant response from most people was, "Oh, look, it's HeroClix." So, which I kind of see where they're getting at. So, there's basically a Fantasy Flight are producing, in conjunction with one of their sister companies who are part of the Asmodee group. Sorry, bad podcasting. I can't remember the name of the company, but the guy who's the CEO apparently used to be with Privateer Press. So it's got, and to be fair, the models look really cool. I think they're basically done in the same material as Legion, and they all come with scenic bases and various other bits and pieces. So they look really cool, and plus the fact they're making sure that they do all the scenery as well. So basically you can do things like throw dumpsters around and what have you, because it's a superhero game. So that's what they're doing, and as I say, it got something of a lukewarm reception, and I'm kind of thinking, okay, where's some of the other stuff? And then, like, within 3 or 4 days of Gen Con finishing, they've just announced a new set of a further 4 expansions for Legion. 2 for Clone Wars, 2 for the Galactic Civil War, which weren't mentioned at all. So to me, that basically kind of said, well, basically all they did was go at a very high level and talked about some of the highlights of what's coming out in the next 6 months. And actually, there's a lot more going on. So just because your game system didn't turn up in the in-flight report doesn't mean to say it's out of the window. It's just the fact that they chose in this instance not to cover it. So yeah, lots of interesting stuff coming from Fantasy Flight. Main thing again is just like more stuff, more sexy stuff for Legion, which is really nice. And there was one other thing I spotted, which has gone. So somebody else, it might come back to me.
Shaun, over to you, mate.
Oh, so we're talking Temptations.
Yes.
I forgot something in Confessional as well, and also kind of in my intro. So I forgot to mention that the King of Dungeons PDF Kickstarter.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And yes, obviously, because I started role-playing the game, actually initially with Mike.
Yeah.
When we did that test RuneQuest game, didn't we? But I stayed with those guys and just wrapped up in the last few weeks. So a year-long RuneQuest campaign. So I thought I'd invest in King of Dungeons. Even if I don't GM it, I think one of my sons will. And they're looking to do some other stuff as well, like Blades in the Dark, and get beyond just doing D&D. So that dropped. So back to Temptations. More Vanguard. Because, once you're on that site...
It's tricky to get off it.
It's just like crack, isn't it? It's the Novan Elite dropships, that's so nice.
Yeah.
I had those early, chunky, ugly Thunderhawk dropships.
Yeah, the ones who are about half an inch long.
Yeah,
yeah.
And I never replaced them with the official Games Workshop much better ones. And then these are actually nicer than those as well, so I might have to do that. And then Alex doesn't know it, but I might have picked an eBay Orc army up for him for Epic a while back. And the Skinners on Vanguard, just great.
Yeah.
So the bikes and all the stuff you can't get that's not in the army I got. So the big shuttle flyer, have you seen that on there?
Yeah.
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 And then their version of, what's that blue skin faction that has power armor and grav tanks for GW? I better not name it, but their Okami look very, very...
you mean the sort of Japanese influenced style?
That
very,
one, yeah.
Very nice, yeah.
Yeah, so there's easily more than a year's worth of budget probably could be spent on Vanguard.
Yeah, don't have a look at the Cyber Shadows.
I have done.
Yeah.
More Vanguard for sure. Anybody see the Warlord Dread on a Lawmaster model?
No, I've only seen the one they've done with him and Judge Death.
Yeah, well, they followed that up with Dread on a Lawmaster. It's very nice.
Yeah,
it's very good, I have to say. And during the week, I noticed on the shelf in a newsagent the 2000 AD Carlos Esquerra Tribute Edition, where they've got, obviously because he died last year, and there's a special edition where they've got stories specifically about him, but a Judge Dredd story, a Strontium Dog story, and also his last unpublished graphic novel thing that he was working on called Spectre, and that's all in that. And I think picking that up and seeing the Warlord stuff, I might have to pick up Judge Dredd when it comes out. I didn't pick up Strontium Dog because I just felt at the time I had too many sci-fi skirmish games I wasn't playing. But Judge Dredd is just something different, isn't it? You've got to play that.
Yeah.
Journeys from Middle Earth is on my to-buy list, so somebody might well be getting it for Christmas, but I haven't picked it up yet. And I didn't do the Joan of Arc Kickstarter because I'm running out of room to store big box miniature Kickstarters.
That sounds sensible because, the size of it is just...
I know.
I mean, you thought Mortal Gods was big.
Yeah. When we were at one of our local ball game stores, Ludicrous in Croydon, they have it in there.
Sorry, can I just correct that? Mythic Battles.
Yes.
Sorry, I keep saying Mortal Gods instead of Mythic Battles. It was Mythic Battles.
So it was a bit like, what did you say instead of contrast paints? Contact paints, that's right. Yeah, so I went through the box at Ludicrous and was speaking to somebody about the retail Joan of Arc's actually going to be a reasonable deal. So when that comes out, I think it's going to be about 60 quid. Which...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and...
Okay.
And they're going to slightly adapt the models that are in the box for the scenarios and stuff. And actually, it probably wouldn't be a bad, retail pickup rather than think you've missed the boat completely with the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So I've got that on a sort of a long-term temptation. And of course, I can just spend all day browsing the Futsal website for more stuff for Saga.
And why not?
Yeah. Talking of which, yes. Something I did think about was that I saw the 3-ups at Salute and North Star are now teasing the next Oathmark set as being Goblin Wolf Riders.
Oh, that'd be nice.
They look very nice. The 3-ups looked very nice indeed. So I'm looking forward to that coming in.
Yeah. They're not tempting me, and we'll talk about that when we get on to Hobby Chat.
Only one little temptation for me.
Yeah.
This is just because I was driving back from the Forest of Endor last night, and I put on the WSS podcast. Hello, chaps, if you're listening. Hello, Angus. Hello, Jasper. Hello, Guy. Hello, Mark. And Guy had an interview at the Warlord Open Day with the guy who designed Black Seas.
Cool Sea.
No,
yes.
No, Black Seas. Yes.
Yes.
Black Seas. Yeah, which is their upcoming Napoleonic naval game. And it didn't sound too bad. They used some of the mechanics from Cruel Seas, which I still haven't played yet, but I've read the rules and like them. But, my ears picked up when they said it's going to be probably 1/700th scale. They're doing plastic frigates and brigs to start with different fronts and backs. And then they're going to be having resin and metal fleets, ships of the line. And I thought, well, I always fancied a bit of Napoleonic, but I didn't want to do Langston because it's just madness.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't think does anybody volunteer to send them off and they'll rig them for you?
God no. So I just thought, well, if it's going to be a fun little game, and it's got some nice ships in it, it's not a bad little, investment to pick up. So I'm going to take a look at that when it comes out. Looks interesting.
Cool. Okay. Is that it? Anything else?
Yeah.
Right.
No.
Okay. In that case, then we'll call that section done. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, it's time to chat about what we've been playing and what we've been painting. Hi everyone, Neil here. I hope you enjoy this episode of the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. If you are, I'm wondering, would you consider becoming a patron of the show? For as little as $1 a month, you can help support us in what we're doing with the show. For that, you can get access to a monthly question and answer show, and that will also allow you to ask questions. If you pledge more, you potentially get bonus podcasts. And you never know, you might even get invited to be on the show yourself. If you want to know more details, please follow the link to our Patreon page, which is on the front of the website. That's www.meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. Thanks a lot. So, time to find out what we've been doing in the hobby, what we've been playing, what have we been painting. Have we come across any hobby tips or anything interesting on that front? So, I'll kick off again. Painting.
Anything?
Moving swiftly on. You know what? Those ships, those full thrust ships, have been sat staring at me on my painting table for 3 weeks? I mean,
and you'll probably get them done in about an hour. If you sat down in about an hour, you probably have them all done.
I progressed. I mean, my Islamic Federation are now kind of like 3/4 done. I've got the main flagship to kind of do the detailing on, and then if I give everything, if I then do a bit of tidying up and then do the engines and do a wash, they'll be done.
Mm.
Yeah, and yeah, as you say, if I actually kind of like got my head down and do it, I'll probably get the whole lot done in the afternoon. But
yeah, I know.
Sometimes you're just not there.
No.
And then I've been doing some podcast editing, so that's my excuse. Although not as much as I should have been doing, but there we go. Sorry, Patreon backers. I'll record something this week. We got a Q&A to get out, and then I've got my diary to talk about, which, yeah. So, yeah, unsuccessful on a couple of fronts. Been playing lots of games, though.
That's the main thing.
Yeah, so last couple of weeks, what have we done? Yeah, we got another game of Gloomhaven in. We did that a couple of weeks ago. We've done Game of Journeys in Middle-earth, in which we died horribly. And we did another game of Mansions of Madness, which was excellent. It's a game, so we did those, and then with Josh, we played Thunderbirds again, because I bought him Thunderbirds for his birthday, just as kind of a bit of a stocking filler, because he's a big Thunderbirds fan and this is proper Thunderbirds, not this new animated series rubbish. Yeah, he's a big Thunderbirds fan from back in the day.
Yeah.
And so when we were at the Games Expo in the summer, it just so happened that Modifius were selling off some of their last copies of Thunderbirds. So I sneakily bought a copy, just a bit of a stocking filler along with some of the stuff for that. And we played that on Friday, and it's one of these things where you play the game and you suddenly remember how good it is.
It is like a rethemed Pandemic, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. Yeah, it is rethemed Pandemic. But if you don't happen to own Pandemic, then actually, it's a decent game.
Oh yeah. No, Pandemic is a great game. So if you like the theme as well, I can understand the attraction.
Yeah. So that was cool. And then moving on to what we'll be talking about in the main part of the show, we've played a couple of games of Red Alert over the weekend with Mr. Hickman. And we played some games of Escape the Dark Castle, because we got together and we didn't fancy playing anything particularly heavy. So we played some games of Escape the Dark Castle with some of the expansions in, which is just brilliant, and just a game that continues to kick your ass every single time. But it's just a brilliant game. I do like Escape the Dark Castle. Oh, and a couple of games of Istanbul, the dice game, because when we have 20 minutes to kill, it seems that is a go-to filler game. So we play that tons of times, and that's a cracking little game. So not a lot of only a couple of games with models, but yeah, lots of board games and stuff. Had a good time, and that's me on the painting and modelling front. On the hobby side, just as one recommendation, on YouTube, obviously there's loads of people you can follow for painting and modelling. Okay, one guy I subscribe to is a guy called Luke's APS. I actually tweeted this out this week. He's just done a video of his frustrations with attempting to construct the skeletons that were originally Wargames Factory, but are now Warlord, and they've reboxed them.
Yeah,
and he has he released a YouTube video which I think is entitled "Worst Model Kit Ever!" exclamation mark. Talking about the fact that he thinks the models are great, however, putting them together is another thing entirely. So that's worth checking out. It's Luke APS on YouTube, and his latest video is quite funny. It's quite funny because you look at him, I mean, basically he's got the same kind of non-delicate fingers that I've got, and I could just say I'm just hoping the Wargames Atlantic ones are better than than what we had shown, and if nothing else, they're slightly less delicate. I'm hoping Mr. Hobbs can assure me of that fact, because these things just look to be a complete and utter nightmare.
I will be very happy to convince you of that if I take them out of the box and put them together.
You haven't sent them out of the box yet? You haven't even looked at them?
I take them out of the box and I've had a damn good stare at the spews. That's about it.
That's about it, right.
They're mostly together, though. I think there's four figures per sprue. 3 of them have got the legs attached to the body, so you have to put the arms on. One of them is in bits, so you have to put together. So it should be a lot easier.
And do they actually have? Are they mostly clothed, or are they mostly just like the kind of like Harryhausen skeletons without any clothing on them?
There's naked.
Ooh.
Naked skeletons.
In that case, then they'd probably be what Mr. that Luke's looking for, because he was after naked skeletons, and the problem was that when he was looking for them, these days most skeletal warriors aren't naked. Most of them have clothing on them, or armor, or something.
Yeah, annoyingly, the Mantic ones do, don't they? And it just slows down painting them, because you think you can whack out skeletons really quickly, and then you've got armour and rags, which I find really annoying.
I think it just makes them easier to, it's easier for them to be cast because there's more
basically,
stuff there.
Yes, basically it makes them a darn sight less delicate, and they have a cat in the house chance of actually holding together.
Yeah. But no, the Wargaming Slanted ones look pretty good, and also the heads sort of non-armoured as well. There's only 2 armoured heads in there.
Oh, cool.
On each sprue. So,
I should have said that in Temptations. The Wargame Atlantic ones look like the ones I want to buy for an undead army for Age of Magic.
Yeah, they look really cool.
Interestingly, from that side of things, when you're looking at like naked skeletons, you go back to the very old Games Workshop plastic skeletons that were almost one piece, but I think they just had separate weapons and separate heads. And you kind of look back at those and you kind of think they were actually because they were pretty much together. They were quite decent. You remember when they had that and they had the undead horde all in plastic?
Really?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things like, I'll pick that up someday, and then it was off the shelves.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah, especially when they released the Horde army that had everything together, including the cavalry. And
the chariot.
Oh yeah. And you think, that, and then it just disappeared, and it was like, oh, okay.
I did that.
So that's me. Okay, Mr. Randell.
It's weird because I've done so much painting this year, probably more than I've ever done before, right up until mid-June. Well, I haven't finished anything. So I don't know if it's the time of year, the summer, the heat, getting back to work, but I think the problem is I've also got about 5 things on the desk which are work in progress, which I'm just not got the mojo to finish. And I've been really good up to them about being the last couple of years being concentrated and trying to finish what was in front of me and keeping it small, like 6 to 12 28mm figures, or no more than 16 15mm figures. But yeah, I've got about 4 or 5 things that I'm working on and I haven't finished. The samurai, for the aforementioned samurai project, doing a daisho buntai, if that's how you say warband in Japanese. My grenadier orc wolf riders from probably 1993. Nice big chunky metal wolves and slightly sort of Mongol horde looking, sort of like in terms of the armour and the fur, orcs on them, sort of proper old school orc wolf riders. So I'm doing those rather than the North Star ones. Yeah, those half tracks I mentioned earlier, the ones with the sort of infantry gun cannon on it and the command one, undercoated. Full thrust ships as well, because you made me get mine out, look at them and go, I never really finished these, did I? So I've got my New England Confederation fleet, which was never really shaded and highlighted. I'd done the base coat and the details of all the griblies and things. And then my son Alex has a Scandinavian fleet, whatever the Scandi Federation's called. And I really wanted to do that. What are those old 1970s sci-fi posters? Was it somebody Morris? Am I getting the name right? The artist who did all those iconic big spaceship posters.
You mean Chris Foss?
That's it. It's like Morris, Chris Fossey. I wanted to do something that looked like his kind of style for the scan fed. It was like maybe red and white.
Yeah.
But there's too many bits to draw straight white lines on these things.
Yeah.
I started doing my own testing of contrast on some Imperial Guard troops, which I never finished. And since January, I've been upgrading my original paper terrain, cardboard, sort of World War II Normandy houses that I bought, because when we got into Flames of War, this was well before MDF terrain, and resin looked really dear back then. So I bought a load of paper terrain houses, and I've been trying to upgrade them, sort of making balsa wood, sort of door frames and shutters, and buy in railway model sort of scale roof tiles, and sort of put them onto gardens and stuff to just sort of tart them up a bit. And I've been doing that since January, and all of these things are currently sitting on my desk unfinished, which is quite frustrating at the moment. I need to sit down there and just sort of at least finish one of these projects. Play-wise, when I finished my Saga Age of Magic sort of test campaign of my dwarves versus... actually, they're my orcs, but my friend playing them, so he doesn't have to buy or paint anything. I haven't played any tabletop games since then. Done a lot of ball gaming with the boys, but we got Red Alert out again. To be honest, it just stays up in the shed a lot at the moment, and if I'm not playing it, they're playing it against each other. It's that good a game. But also, we've been playing... Have you heard of Quacks of Quedlinburg?
Yes.
No.
I've heard of it.
The thing is, it's such a good family game. My wife and my daughter will play it. So it's it's such a good... It's an engine building game. It's a Euro engine building. It's not a dudes on a board. And the idea is you make a potion, but the components of the potion go into a bag, and you draw them out one by one, and as you draw them out, they interact with one another, and you've got to try and put as many ingredients into your pot as possible without it exploding.
Oh, so quack as in doctor as opposed to duck.
Yes, I have to say, when I first heard people talking about yes, the quacks are dodgy doctors in a medieval German town. That is a real town. I've just looked it up. Quedlinburg does exist. I have to say, when I first saw people talking about it, I was thinking RuneQuest ducks.
Yes, well, I must admit, even when you mentioned it, I was thinking ducks. And actually, isn't there there is something I have seen? Is it a Kickstarter, or there is definitely something that is happening, and it is to do with RuneQuest ducks. Whether or not somebody is producing got something in the mix for a new set of a new army of ducks, or whether there's a board game coming out which is that theme. There's definitely something happening with RuneQuest style ducks, and for Mike's sake, I shall have to try and search to see what it is.
Yeah, no, I hadn't heard about that. I'm sure Mike would have been up to date.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen that one.
Okay, right. Sorry. Anyway, sorry for interrupting. Carry on, please, Shaun.
Oh, no, to it. That was it, really. As I said, I think because of the weather, and also the fact that my son and his friends have been camped in the hobby shed playing D&D for about 2 weeks solidly now. I can't actually get in there to play anything with my friends. He finished his exams sort of mid-June and is now at home looking for a job with lots of time on his hands.
So what are you going to do? Yeah, so what are you going to do? You're just time for another D&D session. Yes.
Yeah, actually, he finished sort of phase 2 of his long-term campaign, and he just agreed with me we can play some Rangers of Shadow Deep next week, so that's good.
Oh, excellent stuff.
Oh, for me, a quiet time, really. I've only managed to get 2 games in over the last few weeks. We had a big game of Bag the Hun at Trialstorm, so it was me and Steve. Hello, Steve. And we were playing against... That's bad, I forgot who we were playing against.
I'm leaving this bit in.
We were playing against Jeff and Jim, and t'other Jeff was umpiring it. So we did the... sorry, Jim. I completely forgot your name. So we did the Malta game. That was the Jeff put on at OML.
All right,
or a slightly cut down version of it.
Yeah, by himself. Hard pressed he was.
Yes, he was. Yeah, never mind.
He was missing a little helper for some reason.
He was, but he's a hardy soul. So yeah, we played that, and that was good fun. It's always nice to play a bit of back the hunt. Me and Steve were the plucky Brits and our Hurricanes trying to stop the dastardly Italians and Germans from bombing our convoy of ships and failing drastically badly. Although it was always fun to watch ships sink. So anyway, so we played that. And then last night I was at the forest again with Matt and Ralph, and we dug out Zombicide, Black Plague, which Ralph has never played before. We had a game. We just did one of the intro scenarios. It's the first sort of real scenario, so it's quite a simple one. But yeah, I think Ralph enjoyed it. I think he bought it already.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it Neil? I forget. Did you try it again and decide if you liked it or not?
We did try it again. It's perfect. It's perfectly fine, and that is it. It's like, yeah, it's enjoyable, you know. It's fair enough as it, but it's not something that I enjoyed as much to say that actually I must own this game. It's perfectly fine, but actually not for a change. It's not one I'd necessarily buy.
He doesn't like it, Sean. So anyway, yeah. So then painting wise, not quite a bit done. So for Detus Titanicus, I got 2 Warhound Titans done.
Yeah, I saw those. Very nice.
Very pretty. Yeah, enjoyed those. They're all magnetized as well, because I'm, as I say, aiming attentive. I like magnetizing things. I've carried on with my Thousand Suns army for my Horus Heresy project.
Yes, that reminds me. Can I ask you about the colour scheme?
Yeah.
My son has decided that he wants to do Thousand Suns for his kill team, and I think one of the things that has held me up is trying to help him paint the current sort of blue and gold Thousand Suns, which are really fitting horrible. And yet I noticed that your Heresy ones are just kind of gold and red. And is that the difference between 30k and 40k Thousand Suns?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Why didn't you do 30k? I hate the Thousand Suns. I hate the colour scheme.
Yeah, they're very fiddly. The 40k ones. Yeah, I mean the 30k ones are lovely. They were very red and gold. So you know, I painted them white undercoat, a wet brush of gold, and then I used the red contrast paint over the top.
Yeah, that looked really effective.
Yeah, it looks lovely. Looks really well. So I've done another pile of them. I think I've done another 26 bases, 5 figures to a base. So you can do the maths. 130 odd figures, and I got all the commanders now on Lolly sticks being painted up, and I'll do the banners and stuff. So that's all going well, but that's about it. It's just been. I've sort of thought that with all the 6mm stuff I've got and all the different varieties of 6mm, I'm going to see how long I can go with just painting 6mm stuff.
Yeah, well, I saw that tweet the other day. I thought, oh my word, what's he on? What's happened?
But I'm sort of thinking, I've got my 30k stuff. I've got Deus Titanicus. I've got more Titans to paint. I've got some Galantis 6mm. I've got a load more epic stuff now to pile into.
You see, I must admit, I didn't realise you just got all that new epic stuff.
Yeah. And I've got Core Seas as well. So if you look at all that lot, you've got lots of different types of 6mm stuff. Lots of different variety. You know, so it's not like I'm diving in and just doing one army for the next 4 months, because we know that'll never happen.
Yeah, I thought same as Neil. When I saw your tweet, I thought, well, you're not going to just paint 40k, 30k, 6mm Apocalypse stuff for 4 months. But yeah, if you say you can mix it up with the Cruel Seas and maybe the Black Seas ships and your Glorantha stuff, then you're doing different things, aren't you?
Yeah. And yeah, so I'm gonna do that. Plus I got loads of buildings as well to do. that's another sort of change around. So I'm going to give it a go. That one, I'm quite infused by the smaller scale stuff.
Yeah, always a case of strike while the iron's hot, isn't it? Go with what you're infused with.
Go with where the brush takes you, that's what I say.
Well, this is what's frustrating me. I've got all those 4 or 5, or 5 or 6 half-finished projects on my painting desk at the moment, and then you're posting up you've finished, a whole army in the same time period.
Yeah, tell me about it. Oh, welcome to my world. Yeah.
Oh God, I really want to crack on with, my epic stuff. Obviously, I've got a lot painted from the 90s, but then I've got a lot of gaps to fill in and some badly painted stuff I want to redo.
That's what I do. Personally, if you've got stuff blocking up your painting desk, move it to one side. Just put it in a box. I've got a shop in my study which is just full of primed projects and stuff that I've half finished and got fed up of. And I've got a rule: if it stays on my painting desk now for more than a week, it goes up on the shelf, and I'll paint what I fancy painting. And maybe I'm lucky because I'm just filling in gaps and stuff most of the time.
Yeah.
Just paint what you feel like painting. As long as you paint something, as long as you put a bit of paint on some figure, it'll come together. I'm not one of these for giving myself targets. I think I've got to get this done at a certain time because I know I won't do it. That's work. I don't do Kanban boards and all that sort of stuff because that's what I do.
I've got a big whiteboard with all my projects on it that I think I copied from Jay's podcast on it a couple of years ago, and that had worked for me. I've been very diligent for a couple of years now, just working through. But also, what I wanted at the time. Do you know what I think? The thing that's been holding me up actually is these Thousand Sons rather than my own particular projects.
Yeah, push my side. Just
let my son down.
He's old enough. He's left college. He left school now. Or left university. Stuff.
He hasn't left. Well, yeah, the other one. It's the middle one. He hasn't left university yet.
Oh, okay.
I promised I'd finish them for him before he went back, so that he could play Kill Team up there. Ironically, which is Nottingham, so he'll have plenty of people to choose from.
Yeah.
The thing that got me is that it isn't even making a rod for my own back because I turned around and went public on the internet saying, especially having been inspired by the previous Shaun we had on the show with his goal of an army a month for Kings of War, and I thought I'm sure I could do something like that. And I've painted nothing since I posted that. It's like, you idiot.
You're in good company, Neil. You're in good company. Yeah. It's a summer break. That's what it is. It's a summer break. It's not the right weather to be sitting and painting.
No. And also, Neil, you do this all the time. You're your own worst enemy. You keep making promises that you're going to do stuff. Just go with the flow, man. Just don't sweat the small stuff. If you feel like painting, paint something. If you don't, stuff it. Go do something else. Stop giving yourself targets because you'll always let yourself down.
I've let myself down. I've let my listeners down. I've let my country down.
Don't worry about the listeners.
I don't think you're letting. You're not letting the listeners of the Patreons down because you're just providing entertainment for when you do. Yeah.
Exactly. Our listeners are used to being disappointed.
This is another hobby podcast where Neil chastises himself for 20 minutes.
Yes. Oh God! I'm gonna buy you a whip so you can flagellate yourself.
I don't want to see that.
No.
I was going to say, what, you want me to live stream that? Perhaps not. That might not get the viewership I wish. Yeah.
I don't know. It might attract a whole new market of Patreons and supporters.
And on that note, I think it's time to get out of this particular bit of hobby chat because it's taking a direction which I'm most disturbed with, and when we come back, it's time to pick up on our main subject for this evening, a woober.
A what?
The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is proud to be sponsored by Firestorm Games. Whether you need wargames rules, miniatures, paints, hobby accessories, scenery, board games, card games, all your role-playing needs, and even toys and collectibles. Firestorm Games is your store of choice. Check them out at www.firestormgames.co.uk or at their stores located in Cardiff, Newport and Swindon. Don't forget, if you use the code SUMMERYMeeple, that's SUMMERYMEEPLE, all lowercase, you will get an extra discount on your order. Firestorm Games, for all your hobby goodness. So here we are with the big review for this show, and as we have already hinted at, the game that I have just been playing, and I'll hold my hand up and say, yes, I was given a review copy of this by Will at the UK Games Expo. So I've been playing the review copy of the base game, but Shaun has been playing an awful lot of, by the sound of things. And actually, you were talking about it a lot when we got together the other week, weren't you? Yeah.
Yes.
Which is actually one of the reasons which it kind of preempted us to get you on the show to talk about it, because it seemed that and we were already having a good discussion about some of the mechanics and various other bits and pieces, and we thought it'd be really good to put all this on our podcast and chat about it. And I know there's a few people who have been kind of holding off and wanting to know more about it. So there we are. We will here we are with the big Red Alert review. So if you don't know what Red Alert is, it is the latest version of, the latest implementation of a Command and Colours mechanic. It's written by Richard Borg, and this particular version is published by PSC Games. It was done as a Kickstarter last year, and is now available for retail. Now, as introductory comments go, I've got a couple of things which I lay open to being contradicted about. I think this is the first time a C&C game is being marketed as a miniatures game as opposed to a board game. Would my fellow reviewers be in agreement with that or not?
Well, what's it saying on the box? Basically, does it say miniatures game?
Good question.
That's a very good question. I mean, it doesn't say.
I just walked past the box when I came back with my gin and tonic. I should have had a look.
It doesn't say so on. I mean, looking at the rulebook, it just says Space Fleet Warfare. Now, there's a particular reason why I say this, is that up until now, every version, I'm open to correction, but as far as I know, as far as I remember, because I must admit I do own most of them. There's a couple I don't, but I do own. Every C&C version before now has come with a board. Now they may include miniatures, like things like, obviously whether it's Battle Cry, both versions of Battle Lore, and Samurai Battles, Great War. Yeah, but they all fit on a board. Okay? However, and it was the first thing I kind of went, oh, that's different, when they first showed Red Alert at the Games Expo 2 years ago, I think it was. And I went, oh, that's big. So rather than on a board, now it's played on it's played on a mat. Okay? And the mat is about 3.5 foot square. It's definitely wider. It's almost 3'6" wide.
Yeah, it's wider than a standard table, which is it's perfectly sized to fit on a 6x4 gaming table and then give you room. I do play it on my dining room table as well, and the mat drapes over the edge a bit, but then the table's extendable, but it doesn't drape enough so that you can't play. It just means you don't have a gap. So it is very wide. It's at least, it's over 3'6" wide, I think.
We played it on Mr. Hitman's uber-sized IKEA table.
Yeah.
And obviously he's, the main thing in the middle of that is he's got a 6x3 deep cut studio space mat.
Yeah.
And it went over the edge of them. It's coming on for about 4 feet wide. Of course, the thing is, it's a bigger board. So it is the same, so hex size, like most CNC games. I know there's been some different expansions, but most CNC games, the board is 13x9. This is 13x11, so it's the same size as the Great War board. Yeah. Because the Great War's 13x11, and Red Alert again is 13x11.
But it's bigger hexes.
And of course, it's bigger hexes. I think there's a discussion to be had. I think we can probably have that a bit later.
Yeah, about the form of the game certainly is a discussion point.
Yeah. So, and I think it'd be good to discuss that. But immediately, my first thoughts was, given how it's presented and how it comes out, most CNC games will comfortably fit onto your dining room table. This is at a push.
Yeah, it'd have to be extendable,
which is interesting. I thought, that's an interesting point. And one thing we actually noticed while we were on the bit of talking about the game mat, when we rolled out, the first thing we noticed was and went, "Oh, it's not black."
No, it's a kind of a deep blue, isn't it?
It's almost like like was it like Night World blue? Yeah, that really, really dark blue that Games Workshop brought out for the Night Lords Chaos Marine faction.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, but it's that kind of, because it was just noticeable the fact that obviously we had it out next to the space mat, and the space mat's black, and it's like, oh, it's not black. That's not a criticism; it's an observation because because funnily enough, you've seen that in. I think the most classic example of that is Disney's The Black Hole. Do you remember Disney's The Black Hole? Have you remember that?
Yeah, vaguely. I don't.
Yeah, when they did that, because and I remember them having sad bunny that I am. Talking about the special effects and doing that, and it's like when they first see the Cygnus, the big ship, of course, they see it in silhouette because it's not lit up. But you can't do something in silhouette against a black background. So they coloured, they did Deep Space as dark blue rather than black, so you could see a black silhouette against the stars. And it's just one of these observations. I thought, that's interesting. Anyway, sorry. So by way of introduction, that's where we are. So because we're in a situation that myself, I've played a couple of games. Mr. Randell has played tons of this game, as he's intimated. Mr. Hobbs will be the question master for this particular part of the show. So at this point, I will step away, and Mr. Hobbs, please drive.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shuck. Here we go. Right, I think first thing is let's give a brief description of what a CNC game is, because there might be people listening to this who've got no idea what we're talking about. So we're going to have no pre-assumptions. Someone quickly describe what are the key aspects of a CNC game, or the key mechanics of a CNC game.
Okay.
So people know what we're talking about.
Right. Do you mind if I leap in on this, Shaun?
No, I've only played 3, so
right. Okay.
Which this is one. You do the rest.
Okay, fab. Okay, so they are usually mass battle games. of some description, set in particular periods. So we have things like Memoir 44, which is World War II. You've got Battle Lore, which is fantasy. We have Battle Cry, which is American Civil War. We've got Ancients, we've got Napoleonics, and several other versions. So they are mass battle games. They are played on a board which is divided into hexes. Though that board is usually 13 hexes wide by 9 deep, although some of the boards can be bigger. As we've already intimated, there's a couple that are 13 by 11, and actually there are some expansions for Memoir 44, for example, which make the board even bigger. The boards are divided into 3 areas. So you have a left and right flank, and you have a middle sector. Okay. And then you have a set of command cards. So the primary mechanic of the game is that you give orders to units by placing a command card. That command card will tell you how many units you can order in each area of the battle. Now, it may be something like Scout Left, for example, which may mean that you can order 1 unit on your left flank. So you can give an order to 1 unit on your left flank, and that unit can activate and move, and then perhaps combat. Then or you might have something that says Advance. Now, there are special cards that allow you to order units across multiple areas of the battle. So that may mean that, like a general advance may mean that you can order 2 units in each area. There's one called Outflanked, which means you can order 2 units on the left flank, 2 units on the right flank. Okay, so as well as being a battle, it's a game as much about hand management. So you have your order cards. The number of cards you have in your hand is dependent on how good your commander is. And that varies. Now, a lot of games are historical. So dependent upon the situation of the battle in which you're fighting, it may mean that one commander is better than it was historically better than another, and therefore may have more command cards available. So you order your units using command cards. Your units consist of either a number of models or a number of wooden blocks, dependent upon basically who's published the game. GMT, for example, GMT Games, who've done 2 or 3 of these now, are known for having wooden blocks with stickers. Other companies have produced miniatures for the game. Usually forces consist of either 3 or 4 miniatures, and that just reflects essentially the strength of your unit. In most games, casualty removal does not affect combat ability. That is different in a couple of others.
Okay, I wasn't sure when we come to talk about that. I wasn't sure how normal it was, because I was used to Napoleonics, where it does affect combat ability.
That, as far as I'm aware, that is the only one that does.
Okay, because I've seen some people criticise this one because it doesn't.
Yes. Yeah, that was... Yeah, funny enough, I saw that post. And it was really interesting because he... yes. Okay, we'll come on to that. But
we'll come on to that.
Yeah, we'll come on to that. But no, the standard is that combat ability is not controlled by the amount of models that you have in an area. Okay. The other thing is that usually you have 3 different types of unit. You have light, medium, and heavy units. And sometimes you may also have things like elite units or generals, commanders. Now, elite units can normally be identified as by you normally put like an extra model in the so basically it makes them harder to destroy. And those light, medium, and heavy troops have different abilities. Obviously, heavy troops are better in combat. Light troops tend to be more maneuverable. Medium troops tend to be your kind of, your the vast majority of your army, if you like. They're the workhorses. But within that, you can have a number of different differentiations between units, and describing it any more than that starts getting into nitty-gritty of game mechanics, which in the overview we don't want to do. So that's basically it. There are as a further nuance in several of the games. This is something we'll talk about, but in several of the games, you also have a secondary card deck, which you can use. It's called, in most games, it's called a tactics deck. The first game I played with that, which is in first edition Battle Lore, it was actually a spell deck. But basically, it's a second deck of cards which you use a separate resource in order to manage, but that gives you special effects and special actions that you can do during your turn. And that basically just adds to the flavour of the game and whatever you're doing. What happens is you play the game. It's a combat game, and you get victory points for either destroying enemy units or maybe perhaps occupying certain areas of the board. Certain areas of the board may have an objective marker on there, and if you occupy that particular area, then you'll get a victory point for it. At the start of the battle, you usually have a set number of victory points that you need to get to, and the first person to get to that number of victory points wins the game. In most games, and this is actually where CNC's where Red Alert is perhaps an exception. In most games, a lot of this, and I suppose it's partly because it's historical, the scenarios tend to be historic and therefore potentially asymmetric. So the idea is because it's meant to be quite a fast play game, the idea is you play both sides, and the winner of the game is whoever scores the highest aggregate victory point score.
Yeah.
So that's CNC in a large nutshell.
Sure. Okay. So now we know what that is. I'm going to ask Shaun this next question.
Okay.
So I would like you to give me a quick description of the game. Number of players, how long it takes to play, complexity.
Right. It's primarily aimed at 2 players. The theme of the game is meant to be a galactic civil war, which was one of the Kickstarter controversies, because initially when it's announced, both sides were going to have the same models, albeit in different colours. They bowed to backer pressure and actually gave different unit types, different sculpts, if you like, for one of the sides. So technically, it's still a galactic civil war for 2 players. Because of the size of the board, they actually do say you can play it epic style, like you can do with other Command and Colours games, but you don't have to go out and buy an extra board. You just have one general controlling the centre, controlling the cards, and 1 or 2 friends controlling the flanks. So technically, you could play it with up to 6 people. We haven't done that yet, but it's certainly feasible. Time to play, we can certainly knock a game out in about an hour.
Oh wow!
but that's if somebody's made a mistake. We're going in a new scenario and adding new things to it, or making it a bit more complex with some of the expansion add-ons. But no more than 2. So it definitely is an evening game. That's without the setup time. I think complexity, because it does have the combat cards, the extra deck, because it does have the extra resource of the star tokens, and I don't know how many other Command and Colour games have tokens as well as a economy.
Now, let's have a think. There's about 4, I think it is, because it's the Battle Lore, the Battle Lore Samurai Battles does, Great War does. I don't know. I must admit, I haven't played Napoleonics with the Generals and Tactics expansion, so I don't know if it's introduced. I know they introduced tactics cards, but I don't know. But I can't. But did they?
I don't believe they introduced.
Right,
I don't believe they introduced the tokens.
Right. Okay. So it's about 3 or 4. However, this is the first time they have those tokens now have multiple uses.
Yes. So there's 2 things that add to complexity, in my view. One is what happens when there's a red alert rolled on your dice, which we get onto in terms of the game mechanics, and the star tokens and when to spend them. So that makes it more complex than, say, Memoir 44. I think some people might consider it more complex than Napoleonics, but I because of the extra mechanics, but I think because of the form of the game with some of the design decisions they've made, I find it easier and quicker.
Yes, I think I'd agree with
that's
that
to do with design.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so what do we get in the box? Other than a massive great mat.
Well, it depends if you got given it or whether you kickstarted it.
Let's go for the retail version.
Okay. Yes, because the Kickstarter, it has to be said, the Kickstarter version, they did give a lot of nice freebies away.
Yeah.
So yes, the retail version comes with the game mat. You have hang on, here we go. Hang on, let me get the contents up. Right, okay. So you have 92 ships, 46 for each side. You get 92 bases.
Useful. One per ship.
Yeah, with 154 poles. Now, because most of the ships actually go on multiple poles, and there's certainly from a setup point of view, there's an argument about whether you keep them on the poles or not. But if you do, they won't fit back in the box. But there we go.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I do then. Right.
Okay. You get 18 what they call space feature tiles, which feature planetary systems pictures on the front. Now, potentially, what you have there for is that multiple hexes make up a planet system.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the back of each of those, there is an asteroid field. So you can have asteroid fields in the game. They have produced some stuff since, but anyway, that's in the base set. You've got a host of tokens, 36 star tokens, faction markers. You've got 6 capital ship debris tiles. Yeah, basically, if capital ships go boom, they leave a big radioactive mess. Right, you get 50 unit markers because that's how they track victory points, and it's actually called a nice little memoir. You've got 60 command cards. You've got 50 combat cards. You've got 12 task force cards, which are for selecting your forces. You have 12 dice, which is a bonus because in most CNC games you get 6 or 8. So 12 is a really nice number to have. And then you get a couple of summary sheets. So that's everything that comes in the base game.
Cool. Okay, so it's a game in the box.
Do you want me to tell you what you get with the Kickstarter? Because I've got the list here.
Go on then.
Go on then.
This is I'm only going to say the free stuff, not the optional add-ons.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you get the extra flagship, the Vice Admiral Escalation Pack.
Yeah.
So gives you an extra flagship. You get on each side gets an extra fighter squadron, including the bases. You get the logistics and space platform escalation pack as well. Obviously, they then changed the design of one of the sides, so they did that. You get the 2 sort of non-spaceship escalation packs, which is the Space Rift and the Meteor Storm.
Yeah.
You get an extra destroyer squadron on each side. You get an extra cruiser squadron on each side. You get extra unit markers for all those extra ships. And you say 12 dice is nice. How about 24?
Oh.
You get 12 silver dice as well as the 12 black dice that come with it.
Okay.
Which is really nice. Which means there's enough dice to use them as markers as well as to roll them. So you go, I've moved that unit, and then and you're not swapping dice from side to side, which is, as you said, 6 dice in GMT is a pain. 12 dice is lovely. 12 each is really nice, and they're such nice dice.
About the dice, I do have a question. They are nice. They are incredibly heavily etched.
Yeah.
Which always just, and I'll just put this out there, because, like for example, on the GMT versions, and this is both for Ancients and Napoleonics, you got these black plastic dice and stickers, which you could put stickers on. Okay. At least with those, you knew that they were all weighted the same. When you have etched dice, especially when you have, like for example, basically on the heavy unit, you've got a big etched area, a big square etched area out of it. Do you think there is the possibility that that may adversely affect the weight of the dice as far as rolling is concerned? Or is that just being massively anal?
I've heard people talk about this in relation to other etched dice. I can't say I've noticed it. No. And the least etched side is probably the red alert side.
Yeah.
And that's come up plenty of times in games. In fact, I threw 3 red alerts and no hits the other day in one match, and it's just like typical. So yeah, I haven't noticed. I think, taking your point to one side, the dice are so much better than the GMT sticker dice.
Oh, they are gorgeous. They have done a really good job with them. That was just a thought of, wow. When we saw them, it was like, wow, these are really, they have really gone to town on them.
Yeah, they're very visual, very chunky. I mean, I know green is an issue, but in terms of the overall, because of the shapes, the yellow, the square, and the circle, and I suppose the other colours, to me, I imagine they're probably colour-blind friendly as well, which is good from a accessibility point of view. They don't have an annoying silhouette on the colour that you're trying. I don't know about you, but with Napoleonics, I'm looking at the silhouette first and trying to work out rather than the colour. Whereas you roll these dice and you instantly know by the colour before you even take on the shape, if you're not colourblind, that is, obviously, what you've rolled and whether you've got it. And your opponent does as well. If you need to hit fighters and you see, green come up, you know that, you've hit fighters. Yeah. And if you see red for red alert come up, or, yellow for the star tokens, I just think the colours work with the icons and the shapes. And it just really works. Certainly for me and my sons, it's worked very visually, very well.
Yeah, you've just answered one of the questions I was going to say, because the one interesting thing on that is that with the colours is that for this game, they have changed the colour of the heavy units. Because the standard colour for heavy units in CNC games is red. It's green for lights, blue for mediums, red for heavies. And in CNC, it's purple, not red. But of course, you've got red alert.
Yes.
So, yeah, and I suppose people would turn around and go, "It's red alert. You can't use purple for red alerts because it's not red dwarf." So I thought I'd
that's
get
a callback. You got that one in.
Okay, yeah, I thought I'd get that in. So yeah, hence why heavies have become purple instead of red.
Yeah. Okay.
As my son put it, red panic, orange bang.
Right, let's run through the rules then. So, I mean, we've had the quick description of the game overview already, so we've got a good idea. So, let's start with setup. So, is it scenario based?
Yes.
Okay, so you have a specific scenario which tells you what the forces are on each side, what the terrain is, what the objectives are. Is that right?
Yes and no.
Mm.
Okay, so mostly yes. So you do have a scenario which gives you the layout, gives you the objectives, tells you how many command cards you've got. But other than the introductory scenarios and one other exception, but that's only half an exception, most of the scenarios for this game are different. And this is actually one of the first things I finally think, wow, I love this idea. Right.
I agree. This is one of the top things about this version.
Okay. Tell you what, I'll say what normally happens. You, Shaun, you say what happens in the main game, in this version. So what normally in C&C games, you are given your forces and your deployment. Now, bear in mind, for most games, you're looking at historical scenarios. So you're looking at historical army setups. You are given the deployment of each unit, where each unit is, and also what each unit is. So you have a unit of medium infantry on this hex here. Next to it is a unit of light cavalry. So you have very prescriptive deployment in most games of C&C, with very definitive forces. So you play a scenario and that's it. You are playing with, if you're playing the Romans, for example, you have a particular force.
Mm-hmm.
However, Red Alert's different.
Yes. So the scenario will have the map, so you can put on your terrain, which obviously primarily is just asteroids and planets. And for the deployment, you have markers showing you where ships can be, but it doesn't tell you what they are. It's a hidden deployment method. Okay. What's also hidden is the makeup of your fleet, and that can be random or chosen based upon the scenario, based upon a set of 12 fleet cards. So in a lot of scenarios, what generally happens is you deal yourself each a fleet card randomly. That gives you a fleet which will cost somewhere between 96 and 100 points. And you can deploy, once you've done the base game, and you can then deploy up to 140 points. So as an example, a carrier might be 23 points, a battleship unit might be 18 points, and long-range fighter unit might be 4 points. So your card will be around 100 points, and if it's slightly shy of 100 points, it gives you a bonus to the extra 40 points that you use. So if it had 98 points on the card, you can then spend 42 points to deploy extra units.
Mm-hmm.
You then take these unit chits and you deploy them underneath the markers on the board secretly. So your opponent then doesn't know what you've deployed, and you both do that. Generally, each scenario has 10 hexes where you're deployed, and if you can end up with more than 10 units, in which case you then deploy openly the extra ones as long as they're next to existing units. And actually you can be very clever about that, and I did lose heavily a scenario at the weekend to my son because I stupidly missed a trick he didn't, and that won him the game just through deployment. But that's a lesson learned. But that was a game, me not knowing the rule on a particular expansion properly at that time. And then once you're deployed, you then take the marker chits off, and underneath you turn over your unit cards, and that shows you and your opponent what your deployment is, and that's the point at which you then put out the models depending upon your deployment. So every game, the same scenario, you can be playing with completely different fleets, which adds to the replayability no end.
That does sound quite similar to Battlelore 2nd Edition.
Yeah, I was going to say Battlelore. Battlelore 2nd is one of the few I've not played. I shall have to rectify that, Mr. Hobbs.
Yeah.
But first edition, first edition did have a random scenario generator with also random deployment, or deployment cards that you could which you could choose to deploy your army. That is the only other version I know that's anything like this.
Yeah. I think from my memory of playing Battlelore 2, it's a little bit different because you each have a scenario card which puts down the terrain for your half of the table. And then you also it also gives you your objectives, and you then basically point up your army for a particular number of points. And again, you've got these army, sort of ready-made armies that you could use and stuff. So it's a similar sort of process. Okay. And you can see how it works because they're not being so prescriptive as they are in the historical game where they're playing historical battles.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Obviously, it is interesting the fact that the two games that have this mechanic are fantasy and sci-fi driven, so they're non-historical.
Yeah. One of the other things is the deployment, the predetermined deployments are different for each side. So where the game generally, in terms of the unit quality and stuff, is symmetrical, actually the deployment is asymmetrical.
In what way?
In that the predetermined sort of, say, the 10 units with the markers on it on the scenario map, they're not mirror images of one another.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So so therefore, one of the things is you can also vary it by effectively swapping around and playing the other side. Should you so wish.
Okay. So we've set up. We've got our big mat out. We've got lots of spaceships on the mats. We've got 12 dice each. We've got a nice mug of steaming tea or cold drink of your choice.
Not near my table, you ain't.
On a coaster, nowhere near the cards. Well, you've got your cards already sleeved because Neil does that.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Shaun. So, turn sequence. How does the game play? And what are these star markers that I've heard so much about?
So, do you want to take that, Neil?
Yeah, which bit? Okay, right. Okay, game sequence. Now, again, this is something that, using a mechanic I haven't seen in a C&C game before. Normally, in a C&C game, and this includes Battle Law as far as I'm aware, I don't know about Battle Law 2, but certainly Battle Law 1, the scenario dictates who moves first. Not in Red Alert. And this again, immediately we kind of looked at this and went, whoa, okay, this is really interesting once you start looking into it. So, the first player is determined by this. Okay, both players choose a command card. The person, and then you reveal them. The person who orders the least number of units moves first. So they become first player for the entire game. Right, so they have first move. However, the second player then must play the command card that they played. So, essentially, the first two moves are predetermined. Okay.
No, that's not right.
Really?
Only the player who goes first has to play that command card. The player who goes second can play any card from his hand after that.
Ooh, that's not. Oh, hang on. Point of order. I don't think that's right because we checked it and went, hang on a minute, surely.
Well, it's one of those two listeners, and we'll find out later on.
No, stop. We'll sort that out now. Okay, right. Okay, setup. Right, determine first player. Right, if tied. Right, okay. At the same time, these cards are revealed. The player's command card that orders the fewest number of units will take the first turn using the card selected. After the first turn is complete, the opponent will take his turn using the command card that he previously selected. Really? Setup of the game, number 10.
So there you are. Shaun, you've been playing the game all wrong.
I'm certain. This is where I do have a problem with the rule book, actually. That the rule book, I think, isn't the best thing. That I'm certain elsewhere it says that you don't have to use that card.
There may be. I did come across. There was a particular scenario where you don't have to.
Maybe the intro scenario or something you don't have to, and from then on we just carry on playing it the same way. But
because we looked it up because we immediately because what we originally what we thought with that was, whoa, that makes things really interesting in the fact of if you're willing to go second, And it's almost like it's double bluff. But if you're willing to go second, you can see that your opponent only moves like one ship or maybe two ships, and then you go like all out attack, and everything goes. But
which is why sometimes we can do a quick game.
Yeah. So yeah, that's. So that was what I thought was a really interesting start. And if you then order if you order the same number of units, you then roll 5 dice each. Whoever scores the most stars is the first player.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
Star tokens. What on earth are star tokens?
I've seen them described as money, and I've also seen them described as energy.
Yeah.
They're basically your resource. So you generally start off with 5 star tokens, and you use these in a variety of ways. If you want to battle back, which is a standard going the second mechanic in a Command & Colours game, you have to pay 2 star tokens. You obviously don't in Napoleonics. Do you have to pay star tokens in the other ones that use them for that?
Nope. It's the first. It's the first time where. But having said that, it's interesting because normally you can't range battle back.
Yes, of course. That's one of the first things, isn't it? Yes, this is a range game primarily. So yes, so from that point of view, it represents powering up the phasers or beam weapons or whatever. So to battle back, you have to pay 2. For your combat cards, so the tactics cards, the things that add the fun and nonsense to the game, they cost normally between 1 and 2 tokens to play.
The really fun ones are more expensive, but yeah.
Yeah. If you get a red alert, a red alert affects you if you've been hit as well. So it's a bit like the flag mechanic in the other games, which will force you to retire. But engineering can spend your resource, your star tokens, to stop you and negate a red alert. So you can sort of hang in there if you still think that you want to battle back or you still want to hold your position. You can spend star tokens to do that. So there's a balance because, do you want to hold them back for battling back? Do you want to hold them back for a combat card? There are some combat cards which you can play with your command card. The normal one for that is the one that gives you extra star tokens. So there's one which gives you 5 star tokens. Only costs you 1, so you have a net +4 increase. But you can only play 1 combat card a turn. And it does seem to me that every time I play the one to replenish my pool, I then can't play the combat card that might have won me the battle later in that turn. And you have a choice at the end of every turn. When you play your card, normally in Command & Colours game, you discard your command card and draw a command card. In Red Alert, you discard your command card, discard the combat card you've played, and either draw 2 star tokens or 1 star token and 1 combat card. So you can choose what resource you want, by more additional benefit in hand or more resource.
Yeah.
Yeah. You do draw your command card back.
Yeah, you always draw your command card.
Yeah, and is it that if you haven't played a combat card that turn, you can also discard a combat card for an extra star token?
Yes.
Yeah. So star tokens, this extra resource are suddenly a lot more. Well, they have a lot more uses. I think you can also use them as to move an extra hex as well.
Yes. So there's when it comes to movement,
yes,
you can pay to move an extra hex. Buzzword doesn't, but movement, I forgot about that one. Yes. And also there are combat cards where you can move as many units as you pay for out star tokens. So you can move units across all the sectors of the board that you can afford to pay out the star tokens that you have. And also there's a card where you can bribe the opponent not to shoot you. Obviously,
Okay.
as it's a civil war, obviously the card represents the fact that they don't want to shoot on their friends.
Okay, so standard sort of turn sequence in C&C is player takes a turn. He has a hand, so he or she has a hand of command cards and maybe some extra battle cards. But in this one, you've got command cards and battle cards.
Yeah.
You play one of your command cards. That tells you a number of units that you can move in each of the 3 areas.
Yep.
And then you can also then play a battle card, which gives you an extra, slippery benefit, which you're paying for using these star tokens.
Yes.
Pretty much?
Yes.
Okay. So, say I'm playing a card that allows me to move, 2 units on the left-hand flank. What do those units do? Do they move and fire? Do they just move? Or can they just fire? What's the sort of mechanic when you activate a unit?
It's the standard command and colours mechanic of you do all your movement first, and then you do all your battling second.
Yeah. And as you said earlier, it's more of a range game than most CNC games. Okay.
And this is where I think. So one of the criticisms of people who haven't played it and they're unsure about it is, as it's a hex-based, command and colours mechanics game, things like units in front of units do block line of sight. And obviously, as it's a space game,
but space is big.
Space is so big.
Yeah.
So this is where I think they've got round it. This game is the most mobile command and colours game. Every unit has tremendous mobility. So fighters, for example, can move 4 units, 4 spaces, and sort of cruisers and destroyers can sort of move 2 generally. Destroyers can do effectively a cavalry charge and move 3. And if you want a unit to move further, as we said earlier, you can pay a star token to use its impulse engines, its non-warp speed engines, to move slightly further forward. There are command cards and there are combat cards which can move 1 unit or even, lots of units up to 5 hexes, which on some scenarios where you have to come off the end of the board for to get points, you can just suddenly move your whole fleet forward very quickly, and you can move units across whole sectors. So mobility in this game makes up for the mechanics or command and colours game perhaps limiting the theme. I think that has worked really well. So the movement is really good in this game, and you can be attacked by something that's not in your sector and you thought was out of range, and it comes across the board and it's there.
Because the other thing to note on that is that ranges in this game are big. Essentially, outside. Okay, so outside of fighters and destroyers, everything has range 4.
Okay.
So
that's 4 hexes.
4 hexes. Now, in most CNC games, outside of artillery, the biggest range you normally see is 3. And that's only at all. Okay, I think longbowmen in Battle Lore have 4, but that it's limited to specific units. In this game, the default is now you might be rolling different number of dice at different ranges, but the default range is 4 hexes, and it's only destroyers and fighters that have more limited range.
Okay, so movement is all done by hexes, so you have a number of hexes you can move. Can you move through friendly troops?
No,
you can't. Okay.
No.
Now this is one of the things. I think they've missed. I think they may have missed a trick. Right. There is a difference because I don't know whether to talk about this during combat or whether to. Right. Okay. But for movement, light troops in some games can interpenetrate.
Yeah.
And thematically, I am slightly disappointed that the light troops in this game, which are the fighters, can't interpenetrate the other troops.
Yeah.
Because you don't get like the shot in Return of the Jedi, where you've got the Millennium Falcon and the associated fighter wings flying through the fleet. Just prior, just prior to the warp jump. From a space battle kind of thing, that's just cool, and it's quite thematic. And unfortunately, you can't do it. So there is no movement into penetration.
Okay, that's a bit different.
Yeah, that is. I think that's the first thing. The first game you play, you all go, "Damn it! Why can't I see through my units, and why can't I fly through them?" Which is why I was making the point about there's a lot of mobility. The fighters have a 4-hex move.
Oh, and they whiz around all over the place.
Yeah, so it doesn't actually interfere the gameplay at all.
You just got to be really careful on when you move stuff. So you want to move your stuff out of the way to get your biggies, or the stuff in your second wave moving through, don't you?
Yeah. Yes. Sorry. There is one exception to the interpenetration rule, which I discovered in my second game. One of your combat cards means that you can activate the cloaking device that is installed on your ship.
Oh yes, the cloaking device. Yes.
Which allows you to move 4 hexes and interpenetrate anything.
Okay.
But that is in normal movement, that is the exception as opposed to the rule.
Okay. So combat. How does it work?
Okay. It is the standard command and colours mechanic of you roll X number of dice. It's generally 3 at most ranges where your ships are effective, and you're looking for either the orange blast symbol or the symbol of the ship that you're attacking. As we mentioned earlier, it's the green circle, blue triangle, and purple square, isn't it, Neil?
Yes.
The green is for fighters. The blue is for strike class ships, which are your carriers and destroyers, and the purple is for your capital ships, which are your battleships, your flagship, your carrier from the expansion, and your dreadnought from the expansion. Generally, you're rolling 3 dice. The close range ships, the fighters and the destroyers will do 3 dice if their hex is next to the target, and cruisers and battleships, flagships, etc. will do 3 dice from up to sort of 2-3 hexes away. Battleships have a 3 dice range of 3 hexes, isn't it, Neil?
Yep.
Before they start dropping off, whereas fighters only have a maximum range of 2, and at 2 hexes that's already down to 1. So it is a long range game, and lethality generally is high all the way through on the range that's effective.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that most units are only 3 ships anyway, so your units are the standard units of all 3 models. There are heavy versions which are 4 models, but you normally don't use a lot of those, to be fair, because there's not many of those put into the pre-described fleet lists, and I'm not sure they're worth the money, to be honest, when I've used them, compared to spending the money on more units generally.
Yeah.
So generally, you remove a model for either an orange blast or the symbol that matches the target. There is a sort of circular difference between classes where fighters are less effective against the class above them. So if a fighter is attacking a destroyer or a cruiser, then the cruiser or destroyer can ignore 1 blast symbol. And if a fighter is attacking a capital ship, they can generally ignore 2 blast symbols. All the way round to actually when a battleship or a capital class ship is shooting a fighter, they can ignore 1 blast symbol because they're too nimble for the slow-moving guns of the capital ship. You can imagine Cylon raiders coming into Battlestar Galactica and the flat cannons not tracking them, or in fact, turbo lasers on Death Stars not tracking X-Wings. It has that kind of theme to it.
Okay, so that's only for blasts.
Yes.
Only for blasts, yeah. So if you get the symbol, what you're really looking for is the symbol, not the orange blast.
Okay. So if a capital ship is just 1, so I mean it only takes 1 purple square to take out a capital ship.
To take out one of the 3 models in your capital ship unit, yeah.
Okay. So they are still multiple ships, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
With one exception.
Yes.
Well, sorry.
Two of expansions.
And plus 2 of the expansions, right. Some of the capital ships only have one model. So I think that's the flagship, the Vice Admiral ship, and the Dreadnought.
And the carrier.
And the carrier. Right, okay. So they are single ships. However, each of them also has a CAP, Combat Air Patrol. So they have an escort of fighters.
Okay. So you got to take the fighters out first.
So you got to take the fighters out first, and I don't know if it's the same for the other ships because I haven't seen the expansions. So Shaun can talk to me. But then, once you've taken the fighters out, which are they act in combat, but they're also ablative armor. If you then hit the capital ship, you have to hit it twice.
Right.
So once you hit it, you then have to re-roll and hit it again. And at that point, it's taken out. So if you hit it and then miss it, what they do, you have to confirm your hit. If you fail to confirm your hit, it survives. So the flagship, which is obviously your command ship, and it has some special rules, then that is a little bit more survivable.
Okay.
Is that the same for the other single capital ship, Shaun? Do they use the same rules, or is it just the flagship that has that extra bit of survivability?
I think the Dreadnought actually you've got to confirm your hit twice.
Oh, because it's a big ship. Yeah, okay.
So in our turn, we played our card, we moved our units around, we've done all our firing. Do we then draw a card back into our hand to replace?
There's one other mechanic which we need to talk about as far as part of combat, which is the mechanic after which the game is named, which is the red alert mechanic. This replaces the flag mechanic that you have in most of the games.
Okay.
In fact, all the games up until now have a flag mechanic, some sort of morale.
Mm. So
red alerts are...
So this is one side of the dice.
It's one side of the dice. So one will have a red alert icon on it. Okay? These are, I suppose, effectively, they're like critical hits. Okay? So the first thing is, you can only score a red alert if you also score a hit.
Yep.
If you don't score a hit but you roll red alerts, then tough. So but effectively they're criticals, right? And they potentially force you to retreat. Each red alert symbol forces the opponent to retreat 2 squares.
Right.
Which is probably one of the reasons why the board is so big.
Yeah.
Because if you roll, imagine if you roll 3 red alerts against somebody. Remember, normally you're rolling 3 or maybe 4 dice. Certain combat cards give you bonuses So potentially, like for example, if you're using torpedoes, for example, as a combat card, that gives you +2 dice. So you could be rolling either 5 or 6 dice. So yeah, there is a potential you can have a hit and 3 or 4 red alert symbols. So you could potentially be retreating a long way.
Yeah.
Right. So that red alert symbol, right, if you roll just 1, there are several ways you can ignore it. You can spend 2 star tokens, which basically means that you're engineering. Good old Geordie has come along and fixed the warp core again. Your engineers have managed to avoid whatever disaster has just occurred, so you can avoid the red alert token. Similarly, if you happen to be next to the flagship, works in the same way as if you're next to the general in some of the CNC games. You can ignore one red alert. However, that's only if a single red alert is rolled. Now, in some games, it says if you roll multiples, you can always ignore 1. In this one, as soon as you roll multiples, you have to take the lot. You can't just ignore 1. You have to do it. You have to take the lot. I've got to say, I am right in that, because I must admit, I've read through that rule about 3 or 4 times during when we were playing it, kind of going, are we sure about this? Because it's like, in other games, you can always ignore, you can normally say, okay, well, I've had 2 flags, well, I can ignore one of them, so I'll just take one. No, in this, as soon as you get 2 flags, you have to take both of them, for example. So, if you get 2 red alerts, you have to go back, you are forced back 4 hexes. When you have 1 red alert, you can either mitigate it using star tokens, or you can take it and then move back 2. At that point, a red alert token is placed on your unit after it's retreated. And whilst that token is on your unit, it cannot move, and all combat is performed at -1 dice. Okay? The other interesting thing with this is that obviously red alerts cause retreats. Now, one of the ways of destroying units in most C&C games is to get, and obviously it's the main way of using cavalry, is to get round behind the units, block off their line of retreat, and attack them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they can't retreat because they've got enemy units behind them, because you can't interpenetrate enemy units, and therefore they just lose hexes. They just lose troops and die. Quickest way of killing a unit in C&C. Red alert is slightly different, and this is where I was talking about the other rule about interpenetration. When you are forced to when you get a red alert, you can interpenetrate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Both attackers and defenders. However, when doing so, if you go through a friendly unit, you roll 1 dice, and if you roll your unit symbol, you lose a ship. If you are forced to retreat through an enemy unit, you roll 2 dice. So essentially what happens is, you can still retreat, but you're either taking enemy fire, or there is a potential that in your panic you have a ship-to-ship collision.
In the vast expanse of space, which some people don't like, but I'm fine with that, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's
nice to have a little bit of, something in there just to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Add a little bit of chaos.
Yeah. So that is the last nuance with combat. Which I must admit I really like. I think it's a nice little mechanic, that is.
They've got a similar mechanic in Tricon, the AWI version.
Oh, I've not played that one.
Yeah. Again, it's the flags cause retreats. So the usual, Tricon is not so much a game of the standard firefights. It is more a case of trying to get flags onto the units that cause them to waver and push back and pull back. Obviously, if they're supported, they won't pull back, or if there's generals next to them, they won't pull back. So it's, again, similar sort of mechanics. You can see where Richard is bringing mechanics from all the games that he's produced and seeing which ones fit into this sort of genre.
Yeah.
Which is good. So, okay. So we've done all of the moves, the firing and stuff.
Oh, can I just mention a couple more things from Red Alerts?
Yeah, please.
Fighters, because only small fighters don't have engineering, can't pay star tokens to remove 1 red alert.
Oh, true.
And if you've got a red alert marker, you can't get any more red alert markers. Red alerts now count as hits if they're rolled against you.
Yes.
Okay.
But then when you order, on your turn, you can then pay star tokens to remove red alert tokens from your units.
If you're going to order that unit, and you only pay 1, so it's cheaper. Sometimes, if you've got lower economy, you might take the retreat, and as long as you know you can order that unit next turn, you can pay 1 star token and move it as normal. But you can only remove that red alert token for 1 star token if you're going to order it. You can still pay 2 to remove it, but it's cheaper if you're ordering it at the same time.
Correct.
There we go. Okay. So I think that's the turn sequence. The last thing is just take another card back and just replenish your hand.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
And then make the choice between 2 star tokens or 1 and a command card.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have no hand limit on your command cards.
Okay. Okay. So you can build them up.
Sorry. Sorry, you have no. Sorry, I'll say that again. You have no hand limit on your combat cards.
Combat cards, yeah.
Yeah, you have a hand limit on your command cards, normally 5.
Yeah.
But you have no hand limit on your combat cards. So you can build them up and build them up, until you get a combination you like.
Yeah. Okay, and within the game, is it the standard? You got to get a number, you get a flag for every unit you destroy, every general you destroy, or is it something different?
It's generally the same as that. This is where the unit markers are really useful, because as well as having the range and the number of dice you roll on them by each unit, when you flip them over, they have the victory points. So once you remove the last unit, your opponent will take your unit marker and flip it over, and that will be his victory points. The general target for victory points is 21, and as an example, a standard unit of battleships is worth 6 points, and cruisers and destroyers are worth 3. So fighters are worth 1. There are scenarios which give you victory points for holding sectors. So if you're the only faction in the sector and you've cleared it out of the enemy, you can gain a victory point at the beginning of that turn that you're the only unit in that sector.
Yeah. And
then there are planetary holding objective points, which are the same, where if you've got a unit on a planet, or some of the planets are 4 hexes big, there's nobody adjacent to you on that planet, you gain a victory point at the beginning of each turn that you're unopposed holding that planet. And there's also some breakthrough scenarios. So if your fleet is trying to break through the blockade, you get victory points equal to the value of the units that you get through your opponent's side.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's nice and different because of the victory points. It means that, you don't just have to, it's not over after you destroy 4 units. You have to get 21 points. Except the only exception is normally it's 21 points or 8 units.
Or 8 units, yeah.
Yeah.
But normally you got 21 points before you destroy 8 units. Unless it's all fighters.
Yeah. That's quite good. Okay, so let's run through some. We've sort of covered the basic rules there.
Yeah.
Cool. Extra so scenarios. How many scenarios are in the game? You say it's the scenario card, isn't there?
But no, base game has 10, 2 introductory, then 8.
There's 1 or 2 of each expansion. There's over 25 with all the expansions.
Yeah, there's 25. There's 2 introductory and 25, including all the expansions. Each expansion has between 2 and 4 extra scenarios in it.
Cool. There's no sort of campaign system or anything built into this, is there?
No.
Not yet.
No. Although, as I said, when we were talking about picking 4 scenarios, playing them, and as a reward, giving the winner of the prior game an extra command card.
Yeah. Nice.
Or an extra combat card.
Yeah.
And then sort of doing if you win, you gain 1 campaign point. If you win by more than 3 points, you gain 3 campaign points. If you win by more than 7 points, it's a crushing victory and you've got 6 campaign points. So we're trying to come up with our own little sort of 4-game campaign rules and some little bonuses, but not ones that put you so far behind that you can't win the next game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that little subtle tweak in there. Oh, and so, same question for both of you. I'm going to let Neil go first. What's good about them and what's bad about them? About the game.
Okay. Gameplay, it feels like a big space battle. There is, thematically, and people who've seen both series will kind of get this analogy. It's like a Star Trek space battle as opposed to a Babylon 5 space battle.
What sort of linear?
It's very 2-dimensional. Obviously it's on a flat surface, so it's a bit limited, but you do get, you do kind of get the big space fleet feel. Game positive. massive amount of fun. And some of the combat cards, especially the situational play of them, are just they the C&C games that have this tactical deck, whatever they call it, this tactical deck, just adds so much to the gameplay. And just some of the things that happen, just some of the things that can happen. As I say, in the second game we played, I ended up having due to an unforeseen set of circumstances, I ended up with my flagship cut off, surrounded by the enemy fleet, or at least like about four units. And I was like, okay, well, I'll draw a combat card, and drew cloaking device. And and luckily had enough and survived the next round of combat, and then just played cloaking device. And the look on Mr. Hickman's face was a picture to behold, because neither of us knew, because we hadn't looked at the decks. We thought we'd play it blind and see what came out. Neither of us knew this card even existed. And I played this card and went, "Oh look, our engineers have just said, hang on, sir, what does this button do?" There are, some would say that's just really quirky. But actually thematically, it works really well. So, it's a huge amount of fun. Really, really good. And it does give that feel of big space combat.
Well, sure, same questions for you.
Well, I totally agree with Neil. It's a cinematic fleet combat, space combat game. It's very good. It does reward aggression, but not stupidly. You do need to coordinate your advances. So it's really good fun. It can be really fast play once you're used to it. The combat cards are nonsense. But
fun nonsense.
Absolutely. And it is not lining up and shooting each other. If you do that, you will lose to somebody who actually knows the game better. We haven't really talked about terrain and stuff, and so the terrain is limited, but it does have an effect. So, if you use the asteroids and the planets properly, you can really sort of funnel people into sort of areas of like, fire where they're unsupported and you've got them surrounded, and you've got your heavy weapons and they're trying to get through there and they just get backed up because of this lack of being able to pull people through. Or you can take the risk and go into the asteroid field, and from that point of view, you can get a red alert if you go into an asteroid marker, or you may not. You have to roll a dice each turn that you're in there. But it gives you. It's almost like Dangerous Forest in other Command and Colours games. It gives you the same kind of cover as being in the forest, but it's dangerous to you.
Yeah.
And the other good thing about it is the quality of the production. Regardless of what you think about the sculpt of the models, and we can maybe talk about that more at the end. The unit chits, the hex tiles, the models are big and chunky. The mat is big. It feels big when you're moving. The dreadnought. The dreadnoughts are massive. And the carriers the red carrier is fat. With a big hangar opening. You're moving big chunky models across this big mat with really, good quality card stock and really nice heavy dice. So that just feels good as well. And the
cards, the command cards and the combat cards are really good quality.
Yeah, they're probably not quite as good quality as GMT, but they're better quality than, say, Dungeon Saga.
Yeah. Oh, certainly, yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the quality of the stuff, because obviously there was the horrible issue with Battle of Britain.
Interestingly, they're using a similar-ish plastic, but the thing is that on the whole,
they don't have wings.
Well, they don't have wings. The ships are thicker, and therefore are not so prone to warping. However, I did happen to notice on some of my the Rebel cruisers there was a slight bow to them as you looked down the apex on a couple. So, yeah, not fully solved, but certainly better.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people complained on the Kickstarter about it, but they are, hot water. Hot water will straighten them, and I don't think any sort of plastic of that kind is ever not going to be slightly bent at some point. Somebody said, who knows about these production issues, said it depends how quickly they push them out of the molds. So obviously, when they sent off the prototypes, they would have taken a lot of care, and they all would come through straight. So I think PSC were a little bit taken aback by they were coming through with some of them being a bit more bent than others because they hadn't seen that at all in the sort of prototype boxes. But obviously, once you're ramping up full production, the factory's not going to take as much care.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's easily solved. It is, you put them in hot water and you straighten it. There's only a couple in each box that we've only got a couple that were slightly bent. Neil, you've only said you've got a couple. But my God, the outcry on the Kickstarter comments board, you'd think the world had ended. People are so entitled these days.
That is a whole different podcast.
Indeed.
That we're not getting to now because it's 11 o'clock. Yeah. All right, so what have we got for sale? So we've got the core box.
Hang on. You've asked us what's good about it.
Yeah,
you haven't asked us what's not so good about it.
I asked you questions. You didn't answer them. Okay, so what's bad about the game?
I don't know about you, Shaun. I have a couple of issues. Right, first off, and we kind of mentioned it in passing. The spaceship sculpts are not the most exciting in the world. They are, and this is an interesting one because you have this kind of chicken and egg situation with the size of the game mat. Okay. You have this mechanic which says you have to have units comprised of 3 or 4 ships. Therefore, you have to be able to fit 3 or 4 ships inside a hex. Okay? That in itself kind of denotes that those ships therefore have to be essentially long and thin.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a design limitation on the design of your ship based on the mechanics of the game. You can mitigate that by making the hexes bigger. I mean, they've already got bigger hexes, or you could potentially make the ships smaller. The ships are actually quite a nice size.
Yeah.
The only other way you could mitigate that was to change the mechanics completely, and for most, especially the larger ships, only in the same way that they've done with the capital ships, like the Dreadnought and the Flagship and the Carrier, only have 1 ship in the sector, and then use, I don't know, shield mechanics, or again like the combat air patrols, in order to reflect the hits. That is one way potentially of making either the ship design different so they're not long and thin, or making the hexes smaller. This comes back to this size of the board in the first place. There's a question mark in my mind, and this is what's the start. Is it a miniatures game? Is it a board game? Because of the size of the board, which is dictated potentially by, especially the size of things like the battleships, which are 3 in a hex. So you have to have a decent size hex to fit these 3 battleship models in.
Yeah.
Does that mean? Has that driven the board to a point where it's too big for a standard kitchen table, and therefore potentially precludes part of your sales market, because people will turn around and say that game's too big. It's not a board game, it's a miniatures game, and I haven't got space in order to play it.
Yeah, I mean, as I said at the beginning, we often will actually play it on my wargaming table rather than on the dining room table.
Yeah.
I mean, it just about fits on the dining room table, plus with I have got an extendable one deliberately because it's always got to fit Twilight Imperium on it for my son or his mates. Weirdly though, when you say is it more board game or miniatures game, it probably is the most board gamey of. Well, it's more board gamey than GMT's versions of Command and Colours. It's not trying to be a simulation.
I disagree with that.
Because there's no, there's no fire arcs. There's no, it's because we were going to compare against Fall for Us, and we decided that would take too long. We talk about Fall for Us separately. But basically, if you want fire arcs and you want momentum in your movement and you want physics, this doesn't do that. This is a Hollywood cinematic big fleet combat clash from a film.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Yeah. One of the things I'd say about the mat, and it's something we hit on several occasions. Oh my word. The material the mat is made out of. It's nice. It's printed really well. It's a shame you have to straighten the battlefield multiple times during a game. Because you just happen to catch the corner of it and it all ruffles up. Because it's a material mat. And I think they've missed a trick here, because I had a look on the website and I had a look through the Kickstarter, and as far as I'm aware, they never offered a neoprene version of the mat. Why on earth in this day and age do you not offer a neoprene version of that game mat? Because a neoprene version of that mat would be perfect. As it is, the cloth one, it works, but it's annoying.
Well, it's annoying if you're clumsy, Neil.
Yeah, come on, this is me you're talking about, mate. Yeah.
A bit of blue tack in the corners, mate, be fine. Yeah.
Actually, that's why putting it on a 6x4 gaming table is better, because you've got more chance of spreading it out and neatening it up before, without and giving you room around it without catching it.
Yeah, but I don't want to board after iron every time I want to play.
Yeah, this is true. Okay, so one of the main bad things is the fact you have to iron the board. Okay, so right, is there anything else we want to discuss before we go on to the physical product?
I'm not that happy with the rule book. There are certain rules in it. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we've been playing, and my son's read the rule book, and my friend's read the rule book, and we've all been playing. Like the guy goes second doesn't have to use the command card he used, but there's other rules that are hidden, certainly expansions as well.
Yeah,
that are hidden in paragraphs rather than upfront bullet points, and aren't on the player aid.
So, for example, that rule about asteroid fields.
Yeah,
it's hidden in an italicized paragraph.
Yeah, it's when we're used now to FFG quality level of 2 rule books, one with definitions of everything bullet pointed, everything has a definition. Yeah, it's all right. And and they did this deliberately, but I thought it was maybe just cutting costs. And one of the only areas where they cut costs, they haven't got an explanation of all the cards, and sometimes the wording can lead you to go, what do you think that means?
Yeah.
Yes, we had a couple of those. Yeah, why on earth do you have a quick reference sheet for all the ships and don't have any sort of reference sheet for all the scenery and all the special rules surrounding the scenery? You've got to go hunting in the rulebook for it.
I did discuss this with my son before we came on, because I've seen people complain about it. There are only 2 bits of scenery, so maybe they thought we could remember it.
Well, yeah, but when you start talking about the special rules concerning especially planets and who can engage someone if they're in planetary orbit and where you can engage them from and what blocks line of sight and what doesn't.
Yeah, because it's not universal, the application of the planet rules. So fighters can go on to a planet and combat the same turn, whereas every other ship can't.
Yeah.
And
planets block line of sight unless you also happen to be on a planet square, in which case they don't, because effectively what it is like you're in the same orbit as opposed to approaching the planet. So you can actually see somebody who is also in orbit and engage them, whereas other people can't.
Mm.
So thematically, it works really well. I just wish there was. You did just have to either have the rule book open at that point. It's little things, especially when you have a card which is literally there for you to put your star tokens and your victory point tokens on, and it's bigger than A5.
Yeah, it's nice because it says this is your part of the board to put stuff on, but it's so superfluous, isn't it?
It is. Now, why not multi-purpose that and have half of it as an area to put your tokens and put your victory points, and the other half as the other part of the quick reference sheet?
Yeah.
It's not as if they didn't have what was available; they just didn't use it.
Yeah. And there's multiple ways that red alerts affect you, and multiple ways you spend star tokens, and they are on a quick reference sheet on the back of the book, of the rule book, but not one each for each player, like you get with all the other player aids.
Yeah.
So there's little niggles.
Little niggles, but yeah, it sounds like you both like it.
It's great fun.
Having played it twice, and having only played it twice, not had a chance to look at any of the expansions, and some of the expansions look really exciting, I can say already that it's in my top 3 of C&C games. Because having not just played a couple of games, but then looked at the other scenarios, looked at the game mechanics, looking at what's possible, and having played a lot on C&C stuff and knowing what's around. Taking into account even a couple of little niggles, it's right up there for me with Battle Law. The other one actually is C&C Napoleonics, which is a completely different game. Mm. But yeah, it's in my top 4 C&C games ever. It is brilliant. I had so much fun with it. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'd agree, and my sons agree as well. I had to persuade them to play C&C Nats, but they enjoy it, and it converted them. But Red Alert, it's not really my game now. It is a family game, and if I've got it out, they say leave it out, and they go and play it while I'm at work.
Yeah.
And my wargaming partner Paul just absolutely played it once, and that was it. When we're not playing Saga or Frostgrave, definitely we'll play Red Alert.
Oh, so what's available to buy? We have the core game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this is again something that might put some people off, because it has to be said, it's a big price point. Because the core game is what, £90 or £100?
99.95.
Yes.
99.
Yes. Yeah.
99.95.
Yeah. RRP 99.95.
Yeah.
Now that's probably obviously you got 90 odd models in there, but certainly that's a huge price point.
Is it worth it?
If you haven't got a space combat game and you want a fun, quick, tabletop space combat game that you can play quickly and do in an evening, actually sometimes could play twice in the evening once you get used to it. I'd totally recommend it. If you hate the ships, that's the difficult bit.
Yeah.
Certainly from a we were talking the other week about the cinema ticket test. It will easily pass the cinema ticket test, if nothing else as well, because you say, oh well, it's only got 10 scenarios in it. Well, 8 of them are scenarios that the only thing that is fixed in the scenario is your deployment zone and your layout. Everything else, your forces and everything all change. So they are so the scenarios are multiplay, and no two scenarios can potentially be no two plays of the same scenario will be the same. potentially.
Yeah, because the cards and the combat cards will change it. Your fleet will change it. Your opponent will have a different fleet to you, and then what you spend the 40 plus points on, depending upon also what expansions you've got, will change as well.
Because that's the other thing as well, is that's giving that 40 points is a great and simple way of integrating all the expansion units, and each of the expansion units brings something new to the party. As I say, I haven't seen them. Shaun's got them, but they look a huge amount of fun.
Yeah, so let's run through them very, very quickly because obviously So I'm on the site now. So the first one is the Vice Admiral Escalation Pack.
Yeah, so that adds another flagship, and what that does is give you an extra command card. And flagships are actually pretty tough and pretty hard hitting. So I think I'd actually compare it to Saga, where people hold their waddle back, even though it can be very effective. You don't lose the game because you use a flagship. I think it just moves slowly. So add a flagship, get an extra command card. That could win you the game.
Very nice. Carrier Starship Escalation Pack.
The essential one. You have to buy the carrier. It's effectively long-range, heavy-hitting artillery in the form of you've got a heavy capital ship. It has carrier fighters. The way the carrier fighters work is the carrier can either move or launch its fighters. The fighters have a range of 4 hexes, and each carrier fighter attacks with 2 dice. So before it takes any damage, it's got a range of 4 hexes with 6 attack dice, which is twice as strong as virtually everything else.
That's the one to get.
And who doesn't want Battlestar? Who doesn't want the Battlestar Galactica in their fleet? Come on.
Also, it's the one time where you can time a double attack if you're because you return the fighters to the carrier after they've battled.
Right.
So if they survive the battle back, and actually they're more survivable in the battle back as well, because the blasts don't affect them, only green circles. So they then go back, and then that will open the channel up for your battleship or your cruiser that's got long range to then shoot the same target if it's still alive. So it's very flexible. They're brilliant.
Cool. Dreadnought Escalation Pack.
Really expensive. If you field a Dreadnought, you probably won't field anything else or much else. I can't remember the cost off the top of my head, but I think it's well over 20 points.
Ow!
I should have bought the player aid in front of me. It's tough and expensive and slow. But you put it on an objective like a planet, you probably won that objective.
Yeah. Okay. Logistics and Space Platform Escalation Pack.
Oh, that's great. They're great fun as well. The transports add economy. So the ships are actually some of the nicer ships. Well, they're like fat Eagle transporters. So they
you just sold me.
Because they're like cargo ships with lattice work, and they either add extra star tokens or they speed up your victory points on holding planets, because they're representing obviously running in extra supplies or landing troops on the planet, or landing your settlers on the planet if that's what the victory points are representing. So you can park them on a planet. They're really rubbish in combat, but park them on a planet and they will start racking up victory points quite quickly. And the space platform, the only scenario I've played with that, it's neutral, so you each take turns to shoot it, but it's got the longest range. It's got, I think, it's the longest range individual gun. I think it's got something like 5 range, and you take turns to control it and shoot as it orbits a planet.
Yeah.
So again, that adds fun and chaos.
I like the idea of this logistics. I think that's
yes.
I haven't seen that in any of the other PSC games. But that's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is. And that's, I said earlier where I missed a trick, and my son basically, he won the game in 2 things. He won the game with good command cards, combat cards that blocked every move I did, but also he won it in the setup because, I said when you have extra units over and above the predetermined deployment, you can put them next to it. You can put it in a hex next to the predetermined deployment. He on a planetary objective game, he took transport ships. I hadn't used them yet, so I didn't know. He put it next to his deployment zone, but next to a planet, because it was only 1 hex space difference. Normally, when you enter a planet, you have to wait a turn. You move up to it. You can't enter at the same turn, and then you move on to it. He made sure he went first because he used a one command card unit. I think he used Scout. So he made sure he went first, and his first turn, he put a transport on the planet closest to his side, and he was getting 2 victory points a turn after that.
Ouch.
So ouch. I learned a lesson on that one.
There we go. To left, Meteor Storm escalation pack.
Yeah, so they add meteor storms that come in randomly from one side or the other, depending upon who went first, I think. And you roll at the beginning of every turn to see if they turn up, and you roll randomly to see which hex they turn up on, and then they move along, and they add red alerts or hits to anything they hit as they traverse the board. So they can be added to any scenario.
Oh, nice. I like that idea.
Also, if you shoot them, and they have 1 or 2 hit points, depending upon which random card you draw. So you have a random stack of them, and then you don't know whether you're going to get 1 or 2 hit point ones. You can get victory points for shooting. So it's another way to add the odd victory point.
Cool. And then the last one is the Space Rift escalation pack.
Yeah, that adds complete chaos. So the Space Rift, I would only probably use it in the scenario that came with it. Is, I think, five hexes that are joined together like a snake, and then they each turn it might randomly move around, and any unit that moves into it can get teleported around the board. Or you can use it to jump quickly across the board. So if you can enter at your end, and then as long as you don't roll a red alert, you can then exit the other end. So you can basically jump across the board and do a surprise sort of behind the lines attack on your opponent.
Oh, right, so it's effectively a way of doing light speed, but you can battle afterwards, because when you do like a move 5 with a light speed card, you can move, but you can't battle.
Yeah. Quite
cool.
So it adds chaos to the sector it's in, basically. So I think each of those, other than the Space Rift, well, I think you'd only do that for fun. The Carrier, the Dreadnought, the Vice Admiral, and the Transports, you just basically add them to your 40 points that you can use them on. So you just integrate them into the game as they expand your fleet selection.
Nice. Cool. So, final question, where do we get them? So, PSC.com?
Yes.
Yes, and actually, because it's a board game, or marketed as a board game, actually most board game retailers it is available from, whether that's the likes of like Games Laws, Zatu, what have you. PSC Games, yes, but it's available elsewhere. It's available on general distribution. So that is an advantage. It's readily available.
Excellent. So it sounds like it's got a 2 thumbs up from you guys. It does sound
definitely
interesting. It's good that it sounds like it's captured that sort of space feel. I was sort of worried when I first started thinking, how can they possibly do a space game using Commander colours? But it sounds like they pulled it off. So kudos to them.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. The design of it, the design of the game, and the form of the game. As I was saying earlier, the chunkiness and the size of it actually, I think, really adds to the fun of it. Even if it means you gotta have space for it. It does it does very much add to the fun of the game.
And of course, you can always do like a 6mm version by using smaller ships.
Interestingly, yeah. Although the rulebook isn't available separately, the command cards, combat
everything
cards,
else,
dice.
Yeah.
I don't think the scenery pack is available separately, but most things are available separately. So you could turn around and say, well, I hate the ships. Well, fine. Okay. Use another fleet. Use existing ships that you already have. But you can still get pretty much everything else separately.
Yeah, I noticed that the other day. It wasn't true in the initial release, but they've added to the store, haven't they? And it just makes you wonder whether or not they did, not the rulebook by itself, but if they did a pack of the rulebook, not the mat and the ships, but the rulebook and the dice and the cards and the hexes for the asteroids and planets, for, I don't know, maybe £30 to £40, whether that actually sell quite well.
It does make you wonder. I mean, interestingly, that you can also buy the fleet separately, as ships in themselves.
Yes.
But yeah, it does kind of make you wonder whether there's a market out there for the game. But if the thing that's putting people off is the ships, which I must admit, when I first saw it, was one of my sticking points.
Yeah.
Having played the game, I can deal with it. Because the gameplay overcomes that some of those key components. However, I can understand people who kind of look at it and kind of go, "Well, I don't like the spaceships." Yeah, I'm with you on that, but as I say, luckily it's such a good game that aesthetic is superseded by the amount of fun I had playing it.
Cool. I agree. I mean, I didn't hate the ships as much, but I was going to buy it anyway. And one of my pet peeves on Kickstarters is unessential add-ons. And I think every single stretch goal and every single optional expansion on this adds to the game and improves the game, and it's worth it.
Cool.
Also, and I've saved a lot of money because I think the Kickstarter and the add-ons, I got everything for, I think it worked out about £110, £120. To buy everything now is more like 180, nearly 200.
Yeah, definitely.
There we go.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think we'll call this section to a halt.
Indeed. Well, that was Red Alert. Or was it? Mr. Randell, you surprised us with a piece of news just as we hit stop on the record button.
News from the front.
Yes, there are plans for a new fleet. I've forgotten the name. I think it begins with O. That uses different mechanics. I think it has its own command deck, and also I think it's a hex shaped 3-player multiplayer galaxy-sized board.
Galaxy-sized board?
Yeah.
Oh my word.
So it might well be, I don't know, a Twilight Imperium style mashup of trying to, expand your galaxy and then having fights. I'm not sure entirely, but that's in the works.
Oh, cool. That sounds cool. Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of these things of if it takes off, there and we've already seen with the existing expansions that they really do add stuff to the game.
Yes.
If they can keep on with that same quality, which is shown in the past. I mean, you look at especially the expansions they've done for things like Memoir 44, for example. There's been a lot of really good expansions that really add to gameplay. So if they can carry on in that same ilk, then brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we go, it's just time to say, what has Dave bought this week? Well, Dave hasn't bought anything this week. However, he does have a bit of a rant. Now, you may remember, it's just a quickie, but you may remember that we went to the Joyous 6 a couple of weeks ago. Mr. Randell, you were there.
I was.
Yes, and rather sneakily during this, Mr. Hickman managed to slip into his bag. Now, okay, sorry. He did pay for them, okay? But because he managed to slip into his bag a couple of Cruel Seas fleets. I just wanted to make out that no, he didn't nick them. He paid for them and slipped them into his bag out of sight of us. Right. So, but he went for the US and Japanese fleets because he fancied something a bit different. The other week, that's what he I know. I fancy doing a bit of hobby time. He just finished putting his e-boats and his Vospers together. I mean, I know, while I'm on a roll, I'll put my Japanese fleet together, he says. And opens the box. And out falls a whole bunch of resin and metal. Not what he was expecting. In addition to which, he then looked back in the box, looked at all the stuff in all the bags, looked back in the box again, and went, "Where are the assembly instructions?" And he said, especially there's a resin minesweeper. Now bear in mind, this is 6mm scale. There's a resin minesweeper. He said, he looked at the sprue, and he said, to a certain extent, it's almost difficult to know which bit sprue or where the part finishes and the sprue starts. Okay. Now it has to be said, he then went on the Warlord website and thought, they'll just have posted them online on the Warlord website. No. Went to the forum and asked in the forum. And after a lovely troll went back to him and said, surely any sensible person will know exactly how they go together by simply looking at them. Thank you, whoever that was. Yeah, it was suggested that actually, there aren't. Someone actually said, there's a unit card for the Minesweeper. I think the unit cards are top down, which kind of gives you a basic idea of where everything goes. But, okay, if you're used to putting resin and metal together, and I've done it for a while, maybe it's not a problem. Dave is still relatively new to the miniatures hobby. And, and he's not a novice. He's done a lot of when he was younger, he used to do aircraft modelling with the ATC. And if you know what sort of standard they work to, so he knows what he's doing. And he'd look at this stuff and said, what the heck do I do with this lot? Or worse to that effect. And apparently on the US one, you get plastic PT boats and then everything else is resin and metal. There are, for the PT boats, the same as with the Vospers and the E-boats, there are a list of components, but no instructions on how to assemble them. There's just a list of components. So similar problems, and the question becomes, it's like, why? Assembling kits, model kits, especially when they're in, it's like metal kits in multiple parts. With a game that is potentially a gateway game like Cruel Seas is, why would you not put those instructions in? It's just bizarre. It's a strange marketing choice because, as far as I can see, all it will do is naff off your customers, as in the case with Mr. Hickman. So, if anybody from Warlord, or knows anybody from Warlord, who is listening to this, please, we implore you, put some assembly instructions in your boxes. This is the end of this public service announcement and proxy rants from Mr. Hickman. Thank you very much.
There you go.
There we go. And on that note...
We managed to avoid several rants, but not that one.
Not that one. It's only a little one. It's only a minor. It's only a minor. And it's a good job considering how long we spent on this show. Good grief. God,
did we end up longer than normal?
Well, considering our review is well over an hour and a half. Yeah, just sad. So, if you've made it this far, well done, folks, for listening. But I hope you've gotten the fact that actually we think this game is brilliant and is well worth a look. And on that front, I have to turn around and say a huge thank you to Shaun Randell for joining us. Thank you, sir. We've really appreciated your company and your knowledge and expertise.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And when Mike first mentioned to me back in February I should come on the show, I was like, no, I've got nothing to say to you guys. I think we've proven that wrong.
Oh, yes, indeed. Yes. And it has been brilliant to have you on, mate. Thank you so much for coming on. And we look forward to having you on again in the not-too-distant future. Yeah, you will. Yeah, well, unless you run away kicking and screaming, having had one experience of this, we will try and drag you back. To discuss several other different games, including some that you're getting us back into, like full. We've already hinted that we could do with the full thrust, as a, for want of a better phrase, a proper war game with ship-to-ship combat.
Ooh.
None of this, none of this board game rubbish.
Give me a second, I'm just going to block you on Twitter.
Shall we go and talk about some skirmish games as well?
That note.
Yes, thank you. So thank you, Shaun, and once again, thank you to the Welsh wizard himself, Mr. Hobbs. Thank you for the pleasure of your company.
Thank you, Neil. Once again, it's a pleasure to be here.
And all that must be said is thank you very much for listening. I hope you found it useful and enjoyable, and we will talk to you again in a couple of weeks' time. Until then. Take care. Happy gaming. We'll chat to you soon.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, why not share it with others by leaving us a review on iTunes? And if you have any comments or questions, you can always email the show. The address is info@meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. And you can also visit our webpage, where you'll find a complete episode archive, all the View from the Veranda podcasts, rules reviews, and our blog of hobby items and news, which is updated several times a week. This is also where you'll find the links to our presence on social media. And here you can follow us on Twitter or join our Facebook group. And finally, here you can also find details should you wish to support us by making a donation to the podcast. All this on the Meeples and Miniatures website, www.meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 3.0 Unported license. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.